The most powerful family of mages had one ruthless rule. If you couldn't awaken mana, you were nothing. And Lion had already failed 3 times. Everyone believed he had lost his mind because he spent every single day digging through the dirt for worthless herbs. But they couldn't see what only he could. After dying in his previous life, Lion was reincarnated into the very game he knew better than anyone else, with an exclusive system capable of turning the most ordinary plants into legendary treasures. And the family that was ready to throw him away would soon be begging him to stay. The story begins by introducing the Asura family, a bloodline so imposing that their mere presence could bring a bird down from the sky. They are a family with enough power to influence even the Emperor's decisions. Being the most prestigious family of mages, they are famous for casting out anyone who lacks talent. In one of the mansion's hallways, an older man and a few maids whisper in secret about a rumor. One of the maids mentions that the first young master failed to awaken his mana once again, marking his 3rd attempt. Another maid suggests that the second young master might end up becoming the next family patriarch. They comment that it makes sense for the young master to have lost his mind, since he failed 3 times to awaken his powers. The older man, who appears to be the butler, steps forward and asks what exactly the young master has been up to. One of the maids explains that it all started a month ago, when the bedridden young master finally woke up. Upon opening his eyes, he began muttering strange things, frightening the maids who were tending to him. Right after that, he ran out of the mansion in total desperation, even during a heavy downpour. The young man ran all the way to the yard, knelt in the mud, and started digging into the dirt with his bare hands. He dug for so long that his hands were completely injured, but he finally found what he was searching for. What he held with a victorious smile was just a weed, but he seemed incredibly happy about it. The butler and another white-haired gentleman are completely shocked by the story of the weed. The butler tries to calm down, thinking it is no big deal, even if the herb was rare, but the maids know the real problem lies elsewhere. It turns out that ever since that day, the young master has spent the last month doing the exact same thing. Smiling, the young man harvests some plants while a system window informs him that he has acquired blue basil. More system windows keep popping up as he thinks to himself that it was another productive day. He pauses for a moment and looks at his dirt-stained hands, seemingly satisfied with his daily work. The young man realizes he is being watched again, and thinks that being the eldest grandson of the Asura family is absolutely exhausting. Then he introduces himself. His name is Leon Asura, but he used to be a Korean man named Baek-e-hyun. In his past life, Baek-e-hyun was a team leader at a company, but he couldn't stand his boss's abuse and quit. With plenty of free time, he decided to play an old game he used to love back when he was looking for a job. Upon logging into the game, he was hit with a surprise. All his characters had been deleted by a hacker. Undeterred, he created a new character, bought a creation pack, and hit the jackpot with ultra-rare skills. He decided he would build a peaceful character, as he didn't want to fight in real life or inside a game. That was his last memory as Baek-e-hyun, smiling at his computer screen in his bedroom. When he woke up, he was Lion Asura, a character inside the game, 50 years after the main story had ended. He picks a herb and receives a notification for Aqua Rosemary, feeling relieved that he retains the memories of the original body. A system window displays the plant's details and unlocks the Novice Herbalist achievement, awarding him 1,000 shillings. Right after, a new message announces that an exclusive shop will unlock once he accumulates a certain amount of shillings. Lion Asura calculates that he will need around 100,000 shillings, and realizes he might escape this house sooner than he thought. He is relieved to see that the skills he bought in the game are active, and that the system windows still function. Then, Leon remembers a very important detail. The body he now occupies has already failed to awaken mana 3 times. Since the Asura family values nothing but merit, he knows he could be cast out at any moment, so he needs money. Running through the mansion's courtyard, he begins to brainstorm a plan to gather money and safely escape this place. Suddenly, in the middle of his thoughts, he stops running as an unexpected idea strikes him. He considers the possibility of offering a bribe to the patriarch to secure his stay in the family a bit longer. To do that, he needs to improve his stats and create something valuable. At that very moment, a blue light begins to glow around him. Excited, Leon rushes toward the blue light, thinking he must have found something amazing this time. Carefully, he holds a brightly glowing plant and pulls it from the ground, celebrating his success. A system window shows that he has found a red sunfern, a rare 3-star item. Lion is overjoyed to have unlocked a new achievement, but suddenly hears someone call his name. With eyes sparkling with excitement, he thinks about the rarity of the 3-star item he just found. Turning around, he spots a hooded elderly lady watching him, and is left confused about what is happening. The lady is Sylvia, an important figure in the mansion. She remarks that the young man has been quite busy gathering herbs. Lion Asura stands up and says he has his reasons, then shows the glowing plant to Sylvia, asking if she can see it. Sylvia admits it seems to be a high-quality herb, but the young man insists that is not it and points to the light surrounding it. He shows her the plant up close, but Sylvia maintains the same expression, thinking the servant's rumors were true. Then Sylvia coldly responds that she cannot see any light, leaving the protagonist completely shocked by her answer. Lion realizes that he is the only one who can see the magical aura around the special herbs he finds. At that moment, Sylvia informs him that the patriarch is looking for him and that it is time to return to the mansion. The young man is visibly startled to learn that his grandfather, the leader of the family, wants to see him. He recalls that the patriarch is a strict man who believes in survival of the fittest, applying that rule even within his own family. For Lion, his grandfather is his primary target to build a good relationship with and buy some time before he can escape the mansion. His grandfather's name is Patrick Astor. The young man worries about being summoned so suddenly, since he hasn't prepared a bribe yet. Suddenly a spark lights up in Lion's mind, and a new idea comes to him to handle the situation. He turns to Sylvia and asks her to tell his grandfather that he will see him later, as he has a request to make. With a confident smile, the young man tells Sylvia he has a favor to ask of her before he goes to meet the patriarch. In a luxurious office, a man reports the latest events to the leader of the Astor family, Patrick. Patrick burns the report with flaming hands, irritated that his grandson still hasn't come to his senses and is only picking herbs. The man reports that Lion still cannot feel mana, but his health is good and he has no memory issues. The patriarch, Patrick Astor, grinds his teeth in anger upon hearing the report about his grandson's behavior. In an authoritative tone, Patrick dismisses the man from the room, leaving himself alone to think. As soon as the man leaves, Patrick stands up from his chair with a dark aura and calls for Sylvia. Sylvia enters the office and the patriarch asks in an irritated tone what exactly his grandson is doing. With absolute calm, Sylvia replies that the young man is gathering herbs, and everyone in the mansion already knows about it. She adds that his foraging area has expanded into the forest, which makes Patrick even more furious. To make matters worse, Sylvia delivers Lion's message, stating that he will see him later, which completely enrages the patriarch. Patrick slams his fist on the desk, utterly indignant at his grandson's audacity to make him wait. In a fit of rage, he yells that if Lion does not come see him immediately, he will level the entire forest. Sylvia simply agrees to deliver the message and leaves the office, vanishing into the shadows. Alone, Patrick grumbles about his rude grandson while using a crystal ball to observe him from a distance. He sees Lion picking herbs and complains that the young man should have run to thank him the moment he woke up. Back in his room, Lion stares at various pieces of equipment with a nervous smile, wondering what all of it is. The room has been outfitted with several ultra-high-quality alchemy artifacts, leaving the young man deeply impressed. Lion is shocked to think that he only asked to play around a bit and received equipment that costs as much as a house. Facing all that gear, he prepares to put his plan into action, trusting his instincts. The young man opens his skill window and confirms that just like foraging, potion making also has repetitive quests. In the game world, crafting proficiency has tiers, starting from apprentice, moving to expert, and then artisan. Only 1% of players manage to reach the master tier, which completely transforms the quality of the crafted items. To start, Lion decides to make 100 health potions and drink them all to level up his alchemy as fast as possible. He concentrates and places his hand over the cauldron, feeling the hot steam from the ingredients he mixed. With eyes glowing, he uses one of his skills to extract the magical essence from the potion's components. The red liquid is transferred into a vial, and a system window confirms he has crafted a minor health potion. The young man successfully holds the vial, and the item description confirms that the potion restores a small amount of health to whoever drinks it. He downs the potion in one gulp and celebrates, thinking that having the right equipment makes all the difference in the final result. Two system windows show that his health has been partially restored, and that he has progressed 1 point toward the alchemist achievement. Lion slams the empty vial onto the table and laughs, confident that his plan to impress his grandfather will work. With a determined and slightly intense look, he prepares to spend hours repeating the exact same process. The progress notifications keep ticking up, showing that he is getting closer and closer to completing the achievement. After a long time, exhaustion finally begins to set in, and Lion feels like he can't go on any longer. Utterly drained and surrounded by dozens of empty vials, he flops onto a chair, feeling like he can't swallow another drop. He thinks it is absolute torture to have to drink healing potions when his health is already full, but there is only one left. With great effort, the young man gathers his remaining strength to chug the last vial and finish his task. Finally, he succeeds and the Novice Alchemist achievement unlocks, granting him a new recipe as a reward. The protagonist quickly reviews the details of the new recipe he just learned. With a confident smile full of anticipation, he decides he is ready to start producing the new item. Carefully, Lion begins to sort out the rare ingredients he gathered in the forest for the new potion. While preparing everything, he ponders what the perfect gift for his grandfather would be. He dismisses the idea of mana or health potions, since his grandfather is a powerful mage with doctors always at his service. Then he gets an idea. The perfect potion would be one that heals accumulated mental fatigue. Lion recalls how Patrick Astor lives buried in work every single day without a single moment of rest. Archmages like his grandfather use mana to ward off physical exhaustion, so that isn't an issue for them. However, mental fatigue is a completely different story, and something that even mana cannot easily fix. The potion begins to bubble with a bluish color and a refreshing scent, exactly as the recipe described. He remembers that in the original game, this potion was considered a useless item, sold for just a few coins. But now in this real world, the feeling of creating something so special was completely different. The protagonist uses extraction skill once more, and an intense light fills the entire laboratory. The blue liquid inside the alchemy equipment begins to stir with a highly powerful magical energy. The potion seems to trigger flashes of his happiest memories from back when he was still white Ian in his past life. He successfully created a mental fatigue recovery potion, activating his potion-making specialization. Lion is stunned to see that the potion is a 2-star item, a quality he only expected to achieve at level 8. Even though he is exhausted, just the scent of the potion was enough to clear his mind, proving how powerful it was. A system message informs him that he managed to create a potion that should be impossible at his current level. Suddenly, an immense aura of mana explodes around him, and his mana allocation talent is activated. The system alerts him that he can now control mana with much greater precision than other people. The young man feels the energy surging through his body as he holds the potion that changed everything. Standing in the middle of his room, Lion Astri is encircled by a ring of mana, finally awakening his power. With a satisfied smile, Lion Astri observes the blue energy now flowing from his hand, finally experiencing what it feels like to have mana. He cannot contain his joy and breaks into a loud laugh, celebrating his major milestone. Outside the room, another young man with crossed arms hears the laughter, and Lion shout declaring that the power is finally his. Lion keeps celebrating noisily, completely unaware that he is being watched through the crack in the door. The young spy continues to watch for another moment with a serious expression, keeping his intentions hidden. Shortly after, the young man turns and leaves, walking down a long corridor illuminated by the sunlight. In his room, Lion drops into a chair and relaxes, thinking that now with both mana and money, his escape plan will be a breeze. He closes his eyes with a peaceful smile on his face, savoring the feeling of finally possessing power. Suddenly, he senses that he is forgetting something very important he was supposed to do. After thinking for a moment, Lion springs up from the chair as he remembers what had slipped his mind. On the other side of the mansion, he remembers that he promised to meet his grandfather, the powerful family patriarch. In the office, Patrick waits impatiently, noting that his grandson Lion is quite late for their meeting. Sylvia, who is also present, remarks that she doesn't understand why the young master put so much effort into making a simple potion. Patrick reflects on his own history, remembering how he was a central member of the hero party that saved the world. He thinks about his titles as the leader of the Astri family, a man powerful enough to found his own nation. The patriarch reflects that he could easily secure a comfortable life for his grandson without him needing to lift a finger. He doesn't understand why Lion insists on doing all this, since the family has no shortage of money or power. Sylvia comforts him, saying it is natural for him to worry, but there is something more to the situation. She reveals that while she was watching, she noticed the young master seemed genuinely happy while brewing the potion. Patrick gets annoyed by the idea, stating that happiness is worthless when the end is near. Sylvia reminds him that this was Lion's third mana shock, and surviving just one is already a miracle. For the patriarch, there is no more hope for a miracle. He just wants his grandson to spend his remaining days in peace. Their conversation is interrupted by a knock at the door. Sylvia steps forward to answer it. A servant announces the arrival of the first young master. Lion enters the office with a slightly nervous expression. Lion Astri takes his place before his grandfather's desk and apologizes for being late to the meeting. Patrick glares at him sternly and asks why it took him so long to seek him out since getting out of bed. The young man explains that after the mana shock, he needed some time to think about a lot of things. Lion admits in front of everyone that he knows he possesses absolutely no talent for magic, which worries Sylvia. He reassures Sylvia, telling her that it's fine and that he has already accepted this fact about himself. He confesses that for a long time, he refused to accept that his body was unable to withstand mana. Because the moment he accepted that truth, he felt he would no longer have a place in the Astri family. But now things have changed. He places the potion vial on the desk and says that this is the result of accepting who he is. Lion explains that the potion is the fruit of his studies to become someone who won't shame the family name. And with a gentle smile, he says he made it with his grandfather in mind, who seemed very tired lately. Patrick Astri stares at the vial with startled eyes, not entirely understanding what is happening. He perceives that something has shifted in his grandson, a fundamental change that goes beyond appearance or posture. The patriarch finally understands that Lion spent all that time working hard to create a gift for him. With a flushed face, Patrick is genuinely moved and finds his grandson's gesture deeply admirable. But his rational and proud side takes over, reminding him that he is a transcendent being. He thinks to himself that his body is immune even to the most lethal poisons, so an ordinary potion couldn't possibly affect him. Meanwhile, Patrick Astri melts inside as he recalls his grandson's words. He tries to hide his emotion and regains his stern posture, asking if Lion has finished speaking. With his grandfather's permission, the young man turns to leave the room with a small smile of victory on his face. Lion exits the office, leaving the patriarch alone with Sylvia and the potion on the desk. Sylvia remarks that despite his stern appearance, he seems quite pleased, but Patrick quickly denies it. Even so, the patriarch keeps staring at the potion with a curious and thoughtful expression. He picks up the vial and examines it carefully, sensing that the blue liquid holds an oddly familiar energy. Sylvia suggests analyzing the potion just to be safe, but Patrick declines the offer, trusting the gift. The grandfather says he wants to appreciate his grandson's sincerity and won't doubt the present he received. Understanding the decision, Sylvia bows out and vanishes into the shadows, leaving the patriarch alone. Patrick becomes reflective, realizing how long it had been since the last time Lion gave him a gift. He admires the potion's quality, acknowledging that it required a great deal of study and dedication from his grandson. Although he believes the potion won't have much effect on him, he decides to drink it so as not to waste the young man's effort. The patriarch then tilts the veil and drinks all the blue liquid in a single gulp without hesitation. At that exact moment, a sensation of calm and tranquility begins to wash over his entire body. The tension in his shoulders melts away, and his once restless mind finally finds a moment of peace. Fragments of old, happy memories begin to play through his mind like a movie, and before he even realized it, he ended up falling into a deep, restful sleep, something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Even though it was just a quick nap, the dream he had that day was incredibly sweet and peaceful. Shortly after, Patrick opens his eyes slowly, feeling completely renewed. He is surprised that he fell asleep, but notices that he doesn't feel tired or sad, just at peace. Looking at the vial, he notices that his mind is clear, and the headache that had been haunting him is finally gone. The patriarch looks out the window with a fresh perspective, feeling lighter and completely invigorated. He holds the vial affectionately and gives a slight smile, thinking about how his grandson always does whatever he wants. He decides he can no longer treat Lion as a weakling, and that he needs to find a way to protect him. The grandfather recalls an old wish, wanting to live a long life alongside his young grandson. Far from there, some servants gossip and spread a rumor that Lion Astri is close to passing away. They twist the story, claiming that the gift to his grandfather was a farewell and that he was gathering herbs for his own resting place. One of the servants even laughs at the situation, saying the young master was looking for a spot to be laid to rest. Suddenly, he gets a massive fright when he is startled by someone who is observing them in silence. A red-haired maid appears and scolds them, making everyone snap back to work immediately. A coworker asks her if everything is alright, but the young woman, named Hannah, mentions that another one of Lion's servants has resigned. Hannah is furious because the servants used to boast about how easy it was to take care of the young master. Now, because of false rumors, they are running away without an ounce of loyalty, abandoning their posts. She calls them ungrateful, but her coworker warns her, as Sylvia was standing right behind her the entire time. Young Hannah turns completely pale with fear upon seeing the mansion's chief head manager. With a calm yet terrifying smile, Sylvia says she would also love to hear the whole story behind that rumor. In another location, a man apologizes for his delay as he arrives at a grand palace. Sylvia, who is waiting for him, says it is fine and asks if something urgent occurred. She explains she had to handle some family matters and asks why she was summoned so early. The man who received the potion was none other than the family patriarch, who glares at Sylvia with a serious look. He requests that Sylvia use her special ability, the Witch's Eye, to take a look at the potion his grandson made. A pink magic circle forms around the vial as Sylvia uses her powers to analyze the liquid's composition. Shocked by the result, she tells Patrick that this is not something the young master could have created on his own. With a look of astonishment, Sylvia holds the vial and reveals that this is the legendary hero's potion. A legend is told about the hero who vanished 50 years ago, following the war against the demons. He was such a powerful figure that no labyrinth or prison in the world could ever hold him. His strength was so immense that even the gods were hesitant to face him in direct combat. Sylvia believes she might be the only one capable of freeing a certain person confined within the labyrinth of that house. Patrick concludes that the potion could only be obtained by the hero, but doubts it is the original since it isn't as potent. With a suspicious look, he continues to ponder the true identity of that mysterious potion. He then dismisses the idea entirely, asserting that it is impossible for his grandson, Lion, to be the hero. At any rate, he decides he will ask Lion for an even better potion, as he wants to give it to his sister. Patrick explains that his sister has been living in a state of dormancy for centuries and hopes the potion might help her a bit. Sylvia, who is actually Patrick's sister, gives a slight smile upon hearing her brother's concern. The patriarch also laughs at the situation, showing a more relaxed side that he rarely reveals. Sylvia says that worrying about a witch like her is pointless, since she has a long life and a body that never gets sick. She advises him not to burden his grandson with unnecessary worries, but Patrick hesitates. Even so, Sylvia bows and says she will gladly accept her brother's affection and concern. Patrick observes her in silence, his thoughts fixed on his sister and the hope that the potion brought. Back in the office, Patrick tells Lion that he looks worried about something. The patriarch quickly denies that he himself is worried, maintaining his usual stern posture. Lion tries to guess the reason, asking if it's a lack of sleep, exercise, or old age, which irritates his grandfather. Finally, the young man hits the mark by saying the cause of the worry is the potion he gave him. Cutting straight to the chase, Patrick asks if Lion can craft a potion of even higher quality. Lion thinks to himself that, in his current situation, it is very difficult to make even another 2-star potion. He knows the last one was a stroke of luck, and that he has no more rare herbs left for a new attempt. Even so, he cannot pass up the chance to please his grandfather and says it is possible, but it will take some time. Curious about the request, Lion asks what the new high-quality potion will be used for. Patrick replies that he intends to gift it to the chief manager Sylvia, which leaves Lion completely shocked. The young man gets it all wrong and starts imagining there is a secret romance between his grandfather and the manager. Thinking his grandfather is lonely, Lion promises to make the potion within 2 weeks to help him out. Patrick is indignant at the timeline and asks why it would take so long to make a simple potion. Nervously, Lion corrects himself and says he can do it in 1 week, desperate not to lose the opportunity. He thinks this is his chance to win his grandfather's favor and promises he will get it done no matter what. The patriarch seems to accept the new proposal and glares at his grandson, who now faces an almost impossible mission. Once outside, Lion walks through the forest and wonders how on earth he will manage to create a 3-star potion. He knows he doesn't have time to train, and that buying expensive herbs would be useless without the knowledge to use them. Suddenly, he gets an idea and decides to check the shilling shop, hoping to find some useful material. A system window opens and shows a preview of the shop, but the items have blurred descriptions and cannot be purchased. Lion is shocked to see the prices in the shop, wondering why a simple old key is so expensive. He doesn't understand why such a worn-out item would cost so much and decides to check the other tabs of the shop. The young man is even more surprised to see that a simple magical seasoning costs 10,000 shillings. Seeing that the shop won't help, Lion decides that his only option is to follow the most traditional method. He knows there is a limit to how many herbs he can pick with his bare hands, so he needs something extra. The protagonist understands that to gather better ingredients, he will need high-quality tools. In a noisy workshop, a man calls out to his brother who is working at the forge. The brother, a large and bearded man, complains that he is busy and asks why he was called. The first man warns that a major client has arrived at the workshop and that he needs to step out to assist them. The bearded blacksmith doesn't understand why he was called, but goes to the entrance to see what is happening. Arriving at the door, he runs into Lion Astery, who asks if he is the owner of that workshop. With his expensive clothes, Lion looks like a wealthy young master and asks if he can try his hand at blacksmithing. The blacksmith is left speechless, but the young man adds that he obviously doesn't intend to do it for free. The protagonist flashes a pouch full of gold coins and says he will pay a very generous compensation. The scene flashes back a bit, showing Lion outside the workshop analyzing the tools. He notices that the quality of the tools is low and imagines that a master blacksmith wouldn't make that kind of item. Even if he asked a master blacksmith, it would be difficult to get a high-quality tool in just one day. So, Lion decides to approach one of the blacksmiths and ask if he could try to forge something himself. He approaches with a smile and a pouch of coins, promising a handsome compensation for the trouble. The image shows the coin pouch gleaming, an offer that would be hard for anyone to refuse. The bearded blacksmith complains that he already has a headache and doesn't want to waste time with a nobleman's game. The younger brother tries to calm him down and tells Lion that the money is more than enough for a shovel. The young man warns Lion to watch out for scammers, but the youth just laughs, saying he gave the money on purpose. The younger blacksmith is confused by Lion's reaction, not understanding what the young man intends to do. The bearded man then asks if a delicate youth like him really wants to try making a shovel all by himself. At that moment, Lee notices an important detail about the blacksmith. He is a dwarf. Dwarves are a legendary race that doesn't get burned even when placing their hands directly into the fire. In addition to their strength, they are known for their extremely detailed and careful craftsmanship. Lion is surprised to find a descendant of the dwarves there, and the blacksmith asks what his name is. The young man introduces himself as Lion Astery, and the blacksmith's brother recognizes him as the family's famous eccentric. The dwarf tells his brother to prepare a spot for the eccentric youth, leaving the younger one desperate. He points to a forge and tells Lion to do whatever he wants, while the younger brother works hard. Lion tries to ask the dwarf's name, but he had already turned around and gone back to his work. The brother introduces himself as John and says the dwarf's name is Millionth Mudu, but he can just call him Mudu. John offers to show Lion around the workshop so he can familiarize himself with the environment. He guides the youth through the workshop, showing the tools and equipment available on site. John explains that finished products like those are placed outside to be sold. Lion observes the process and notes that the equipment is good and the work is careful, but something is off. He cannot understand why, with all that care, the final quality of the products is so low. Suddenly, the protagonist notices something strange in the workshop, a detail he hadn't spotted before. A system window displays a low-level fire spirit that looks much weaker than normal. Lion approaches the furnace and asks John if the flame has always been that weak. The young man gets flustered and says the flame isn't exactly weak at that moment but looks confused. Mudu approaches and confirms that the fire's power has diminished, but grows curious to know how Lion knew that. The protagonist replies calmly that the fire itself told him, which leaves the dwarf shocked. Mudu prepares to teach Lion how to make a shovel, but the young man interrupts him before he can begin speaking. Lion asks John to leave him alone, as he has something important to discuss in private with Mudu. The dwarf glares at the youth with suspicion, not understanding what a nobleman like him could possibly want. Mudu asks directly if Lion saw the fire spirit, and the protagonist confirms it with a confident smile. The young man asks if Mudu thinks he can fix the problem, and the dwarf replies that perhaps he can. Mudu makes a proposal. If Lion resolves the spirit's issue, he will personally teach him blacksmithing. And besides that, he promises to accept any request from Lion with maximum priority in the workshop. The dwarf workshop in the Astery Fief is so famous that it receives orders from various other places. Lion gets excited at the chance to have priority in a place like that, and accepts the challenge on the spot. Mudu vents, saying he worked hard to expand the workshop, but now the spirit is drained of strength. He explains that without a spirit, the quality of items drops drastically, and as a dwarf, he doesn't understand what spirits say. Lion approaches the furnace and Mudu thinks that despite looking fragile, he might be useful for seeing spirits. The young man turns and tells Mudu that the spirit is thirsty, which leaves the blacksmith completely baffled. The dwarf suggests throwing water on the fire, and Lion scolds him, saying he must have lost his mind. Lion calms him down and explains that they need to give the spirit something it can drink to rehydrate. Desperate, Mudu offers even his masterpiece or anything else if Lion can manage to solve it. The blacksmith asks if Lion is serious about being able to help the furnace spirit. Lion confirms the deal with a handshake and says he will begin working that very night. Night falls over the workshop, and the windows reflect the moonlight while the work continues inside. The protagonist prepares for another night of work, thinking that without meaning to he is doing overtime again. A system window confirms that the spirit is complaining of thirst due to excessive work. Lion understands the situation, since the spirit is dehydrated from being the energy source for the largest workshop in the fief. Knowing what the problem is, the young man grabs the aqua rosemary oil recipe that he already knows. He explains that the herb has a salty taste, but when processed, it turns into an oil that fire spirits can drink. The oil is ready quickly, with a bluish glow and a refreshing scent that fills the room. The protagonist pours the oil over the flames, and the fire spirit drinks it down greedily. But the spirit is still not satisfied, so Lion promises he will make more for it to drink. The young man squeezes all the aqua rosemary he had, extracting every last drop of its essence. The spirit drinks it all once more, and finally its thirst is quenched and its energy is fully restored. The spirit thanks Lion, and the experience for his spirit communication talent increases by 30%. Mudu rushes up to him, completely shocked and overjoyed, shouting that the eccentric youth actually pulled it off. The dwarf looks at Lion with admiration in his eyes, impressed by the young man's incredible ability. He asks if Lion is alright, and the youth replies that he is, despite his exhausted appearance. Lion says it's just because he stayed up the entire night, but he doesn't look well at all. Suddenly, the protagonist faints and crashes to the ground, leaving Mudu completely frantic. Mudu screams in despair upon seeing the young man fainted on the floor, pleading for him not to leave him like that. Sometime later, smoke rises from the chimney of Mudu's house, indicating that Lion is recovering inside. Two curious children approach Lion, who is already awake, and ask him what his name is. The little boy introduces himself as Golden Branch, and the little girl as Jade Leaf, leaving Lion speechless. Lion chuckles, finding the names cute and thinking about how they seem to be very close siblings. He recalls that he also had a younger brother in his past life, but their relationship wasn't the best. The protagonist thinks he won't have any issues since he has no interest in becoming the family head anyway. While he reflects on his family, the children's mother appears to call them away. The woman tells the children to go play, and the little boy says Lion's name must be Young Master. The protagonist laughs and says his name is Leon, and the boy repeats his name with a smile on his face. The boy thinks Young Master is a cooler name and decides to call him that, and Lion agrees without any issue. The mother scolds the children for continuing to interrupt the meal, and they run off shouting. The woman, named Lee, apologizes and Lion says it's no problem, praising the soup she prepared. Lee mentions she was completely shocked when her husband Mudu arrived with a fainted Lion that morning. She thanks him deeply for resolving her husband's problems, even though he overexerted himself. At that moment, Mudu enters the room and asks if the young master slept well, being greeted by his children. The children jump on their father and ask if Lion really managed to heal the furnace spirit. Lion smiles and tells everyone it's time for him to leave, as he has eaten and rested enough. Mudu interrupts him and says he has already prepared everything he promises a reward for the help. The protagonist gets confused, not understanding what the dwarf blacksmith had prepared for him. The dwarf shows a box with tools and a gold plate, saying that Lion's orders will have priority. Mudu says that isn't the most important thing, and asks the young man to accompany him to the workshop. Lion is completely shocked to see a massive pile of gleaming metal bars in front of him. The blacksmith explains that he prepared all that refined iron so Lion wouldn't have to exhaust himself with smelting. Lion is surprised by Mudu's seriousness, and the dwarf asks if he thought this was a joke. The young man assures him that he wants to learn for real, which leaves Mudu satisfied and ready to start the lesson. The dwarf begins the lesson explaining that the foundation of everything is the correct temperature of the iron in the forge. He says the metal cannot just be red, but it also cannot overheat to the point of melting. When the iron reaches a bright yellow color, Mudu shouts that that is the exact moment to act. The blacksmith begins hammering the metal, explaining that controlling the force is essential to shape the blade. After creating the basic shape, he refines the details and sharpens the blade with a whetstone. Finally, the dwarf attaches the wooden handle to the metal blade with a strong and precise strike. Mudu holds up the finished shovel and asks Lion if it didn't look easy, leaving the young man impressed. Lion agrees that it wouldn't be easy for an ordinary person, and asks if he can use all the prepared iron. The dwarf agrees and steps back, but gets confused when Lion says he already understands how to do it. Before Mudu can react, Leon grabs an iron bar and places it into the fire without hesitation. With a determined smile, the young man says he is going to try making his own tool right now. The protagonist picks up the hammer and begins the work, but realizes it is much harder than he imagined. His first attempt results in a twisted and useless piece of metal that would need to be melted down. Even though he is tired, Leon does not give up and keeps practicing, believing he will succeed through repetition. Undeterred, he keeps trying, and with each hammer strike, the tool's progress increases a bit. With the fire spirit's help, Lion finally manages to get the hang of it and removes the metal at the perfect point. He takes the glowing hot iron to the anvil and prepares to hammer it with all his strength and concentration. With a powerful and precise strike, he begins to shape the metal exactly as Mudu had taught him. Following the blow, several system windows appear, informing him that he has awakened the blacksmith talent. Mudu rushes toward him, thrilled by the energy he felt in that last strike, and tells Lion to keep going. The blacksmith realizes that the feeling behind that strike was completely different from all the others. Lion continues working the metal with precision, while the dwarf watches him intently from behind. The young man secures the wooden handle to the shovel blade firmly, successfully finishing the job. He lifts the tool, which glows with a magical aura, and celebrates having successfully created his masterpiece. Mudu is impressed, saying the shovel is better than what most blacksmiths could manage to make. The dwarf praises Lion's pure talent, making the youth a bit embarrassed but happy with the result. Without wasting time, the protagonist asks Mudu to teach him how to make a sickle next. The dwarf blacksmith is completely shocked by the young man's excitement and determination. He bursts into laughter and says that Lion's drive is absolutely insane and infectious. Mudu agrees to teach him everything he knows, and Lion celebrates, thinking he needs to hurry up to help his grandfather. Determined, the protagonist vows to himself that he will fulfill his grandfather's wish, no matter what it takes. Time passes, and Lion continues his herb-gathering journey, now equipped with much better tools. With his new shovel, he digs into the earth with much greater ease, managing to find rare ingredients. He finds a Finger ginseng, a plant with effects similar to wild ginseng, which restores stamina. Lion is impressed because just by using a better tool, the difference in foraging was massive. He thinks to himself that the advantages of his new tools don't stop there, as there is much more to explore. With a shovel and a sickle, he can now gather even more types of herbs on his expeditions. Lion smiles, confident that if his skill with the shovel improves, making a 3-star potion will be possible. He decides to keep digging to get used to the new tool and maximize its potential. The young man finds sweet potato leaves and shoots, which can be used as food. He realizes that if there are sweet potato leaves there, it means there is something highly valuable buried underground. However, upon trying to dig, his shovel suddenly catches fire, leaving the protagonist startled and confused. A system window informs him that the fire spirit's blessing on the shovel has activated, and he has gained a roasted sweet potato. Lion understands that, with the blessing, he can obtain edible items already roasted with a certain probability. He holds the perfectly roasted sweet potato, impressed that he got that with a single scoop. Hungry, the young man decides he will eat first, and then continue with the foraging work. He takes a bite but ends up getting startled by how hot the sweet potato still was. Even with his mouth burning, Lion thinks the flavor of the sweet potato is even better that way. He keeps eating and blowing, enjoying the unique taste that only a very hot sweet potato can have. The flavor is sweet just to the right degree and has the characteristic taste of a root vegetable, which he loves. The feeling is like eating a regular sweet potato with a glass of milk, leaving him completely satisfied. Lion celebrates how delicious the sweet potato was, feeling refreshed to keep going. While he eats, some white birds approach him, drawn by the scent of the food. One of the birds lands near him, and the young man asks if it also wants some sweet potato. With a gentle gesture, Lion tosses a small piece of sweet potato to the bird that was watching him. The bird eats the piece greedily and seems extremely happy, which leaves Lion satisfied. While observing the birds, the young man remembers a friend he had in the game and wonders how they are doing. After a snack, Lion stands up and decides it is time to start gathering the ingredients for the potion. But before anything else, he resolves to dig up a few more sweet potatoes to take with him. Back at the mansion, a man sighs in relief upon seeing what is happening outside. 3 days have already passed since Leon left, and the man is worried, wondering what he went to do at the workshop. He turns around upon hearing a voice and sees the head manager approaching, who comments on Lion's absence. The man greets her as the chief manager, revealing Sylvia's position in the mansion's hierarchy. He unburdens himself about his worry and the rumors that the young master is going to pass away or be cast out. Suddenly, Leon appears with a smile, surprising everyone who is standing there waiting for him. Sylvia and the man rush toward him, shocked by the young master's tired and dirty appearance. The protagonist just smiles and says it's nothing major, trying to reassure everyone with his calm. The man is shocked by Leon's appearance, but his attention is diverted to the little bird on his shoulder. Lion is also surprised to notice the bird and wonders when the small animal started following him. Sylvia calls him in a serious tone, and the young man turns to face her, expecting a scolding. She says he can stop now, and Lion imagines his grandfather has already told her about the potion. Lion scratches his head sheepishly and complains about how much of a gossip his grandfather is for telling the secret. He asks her to wait just a bit longer because, despite the delay, he secured all the ingredients. Sylvia is completely shocked to hear that the youth actually managed to get the ingredients for the potion. Excited, Leon says he is going to hurry to make the potion and runs off, leaving Sylvia and the man behind. Before going, he bids farewell to the man, telling him he can return to his duties peacefully. The man shouts for him to at least take some medicine for his scratches, but Lion is already far away. Sylvia watches the young master walk away, a thoughtful and slightly worried expression on her face. She knows regular potions don't work on her, and remembers how Lion was the sickliest child she had ever seen. Because he was the weakest, he was also the one she cared about most, and seeing him work so hard made her apprehensive. Even so, remembering Lion's smile as a child, she felt a small flicker of hope. Sylvia pauses for a moment, reflecting on the youth's determination and what that could mean. She wonders if Lion will truly be capable of creating a potion of such a high level. A few days later, Sylvia is summoned to the office of the Asteri family patriarch. Patrick notices the different expression on his sister's face and asks if the potion she drank had any effect. Sylvia admits that her emotions, which have been dried up for decades, finally became clear again. She doesn't believe Lion did that alone and accuses Patrick of helping, but he denies it. The patriarch says he is busy preparing Lion's coming-of-age ceremony, which had been cancelled. Sylvia is even more shocked because if Lion made the potion by himself, that would be an even bigger issue. She concludes that the potion she drank appears to be a Truo's potion, something that shouldn't exist. Traditionally, a hero is someone who appears to save the world from evil when it is on the brink of destruction. But their lives are never happy, as they fight endless battles and taste despair with every choice. And when peace finally arrives, the heroes simply vanish as if they were mere disposable objects. Sylvia confirms that they disappear without a trace, as if they had evaporated into thin air. Patrick says the hero's companions and descendants still search for him, but find no trace whatsoever. Sylvia then raises a terrifying hypothesis, asking what they would do if Lion were the true hero. The patriarch turns serious and says it was enough to have lost one companion on the battlefield. Sylvia smiles, says that if that is the case, then it is time to hide their cub very well. She announces that she is retiring, which leaves Patrick completely shocked by the sudden decision. He cannot believe what he hears and asks if she is giving up her freedom to protect Lion. Sylvia interrupts him and says his wish to free her is greater than hers to be free. She repeats his words, saying that worrying about a witch is the most useless thing in the world. The witch reveals she has already memorized the entire contract that binds her to the Asura family. The contract states that the witch Sylvia cannot leave the property and must live as a human among them. Sylvia walks toward the window with a dark aura and a much younger appearance. She says that since the cub allowed her to live as a human, she will gladly protect him from up close. In another room, a young man with blonde hair is informed that a new maid has arrived. He discovers that the new maid will be exclusive to Lion, and her name is revealed to be Lixil Astori. Lixil is the second son of the family, an unprecedented genius, and the youngest fourth circle mage in history. He is seen as the heir who most resembles the patriarch Patrick, and his youth is his greatest weapon. For someone like him, the sudden arrival of a new maid seemed extremely suspicious. Lixil doesn't understand why Sylvia would retire because of a simple potion after so many years. The scene shifts to the previous night, showing an important conversation that took place in one of the rooms. Lixil comments that Sylvia seems happy and asks if she is really retiring from her position. Sylvia confirms it, saying Leon's potion worked wonders for her and that she came to say goodbye. The young hare is confused and still cannot believe the story she is telling. Sylvia suggests that if he is so curious, he should go see the young master with his own eyes. She reminds him of how he used to follow Lion everywhere when they were children. With a mysterious smile, the witch says that everything she told is the absolute truth. She suggests he follow the first young master for a day to find out what is going on. Lixil is left thoughtful, finding it impossible that his foolish brother could be the cause of all that. Decided, he resolves to go to the Mere Forest to check the story with his own eyes. The young man arrives at the Astori territory in the dark and mysterious Mere Forest during the night. He walks through the dark forest, complaining that the place remains gloomy and lacks a decent path. Lixil doesn't understand what his brother finds so attractive about that place and thinks he could just ask John to fetch herbs. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise coming from the middle of the brush and stops, trying to identify the source. He sneaks through the trees and sees a silhouette kneeling on the ground, doing something bizarre. Lixil recognizes the figure as his brother and wonders what exactly he is doing there. He sees Lion about to take a massive bite out of something he picked off the ground, looking like a wild animal. Desperate, Lixil casts a light spell and shouts for his brother to stop immediately. He warns him not to eat something so filthy, but his attack hits Lion dead on. The two brothers stand frozen, facing each other in an awkward and confused silence. Lion drops to his knees, crying in despair as he sees his roasted sweet potato smashed on the ground. He screams, asking who is there, but when he turns around, he finds no one, just the dark forest. Upon recognizing his brother, Lixil panics since he only planned to observe him in secret. Lion is also confused, wondering if his younger brother came all the way to the forest just to see him. The protagonist panics, thinking Lixil is there to spy on him, but the narration confirms that wasn't the case. Lixil apologizes for using magic and says he couldn't let him eat something dirty, but Lion argues that sweet potatoes are just like that. Lion is left not knowing how to respond when Lixil asks if sweet potato is the root crop rich in starch. The protagonist is shocked, asking if his brother, a magic genius, has never eaten a sweet potato before. He tells Lixil that he is missing out on one of the best things in life, which leaves the younger one confused. Lion tells his brother to sit down and wait, saying he is going to dig up a few more sweet potatoes for him to try. He turns around with a smile and asks if Lixil knows how to use fire magic to help out. The young mage agrees, saying that making a small campfire is not difficult for him at all. Lixil sits near the campfire he created with his magic, warming his hands in the heat of the flames. Lion returns with a handful of sweet potatoes and asks if the campfire is ready to roast them. Then, the protagonist tosses all the sweet potatoes directly into the middle of the campfire flames. Lixil worries that they will burn, but Lion reassures him, saying the thick skin protects them. The two brothers sit in silence around the campfire, waiting for the sweet potatoes to roast. Lixil breaks the silence and begins to speak, wanting to better understand what is going on with his brother. Lion takes the opportunity to give some advice, saying that stepping out of one's routine can help clear the mind. Lixil seems to understand what his brother means, reflecting on the pressure he feels to be perfect. After a while, Lian says the sweet potatoes are ready and that the smell is incredible. He picks up one of the roasted sweet potatoes and hands it to his younger brother to taste. Lixil takes a bite, and his eyes widen in surprise at the delicious flavor he had never tasted before. He admits it's delicious, and Lian smiles, explaining that those are banana sweet potatoes. The protagonist explains that in the cold of the forest, the urge to eat something hot increases even more. He recalls the winter foods from his past life, like roasted sweet potatoes and other snacks. Lixil keeps eating greedily, and Lian thinks to himself that, as expected, he has a massive appetite. The protagonist remembers how he also used to eat non-stop when he was a student in his other life. Lixil gets startled upon noticing the pile of sweet potato skins beside him. Lian smiles, glad his brother liked it, and the young mage gets a bit embarrassed by the situation. The older brother says he can eat as much as he wants, since he worked hard for the family in his stead. Lian says that although it's hard to be sick, it's also hard for those around who just have to watch. Lixil replies that he never considered taking care of his brother a burden or a problem. He assures him that he never blamed Lian for his condition, showing a more sensitive side. The young mage confesses that, truth be told, he is a bit envious of his older brother. He quickly corrects himself, saying he isn't dissatisfied with his position and will keep working hard. Lian realizes that despite all his power and genius, Lixil is still just a child. He advises him to be a little selfish and follow his heart every now and then. The protagonist places his hand on his brother's shoulder and says he has already worked far too hard up to now. Lixil realizes that Sylvia was right and is glad he went to find his brother that night. Back in his room, Lian checks his funds and sees he has already gathered over 71,000 shillings. He is close to unlocking the shop and knows his level went up considerably thanks to the help he gave Sylvia. Lian still believes his grandfather was rejected by Sylvia and, though he thinks it's a shame, decides not to meddle. He stretches on the bed, happy to have gotten closer to Lixil and glad he doesn't need to worry about being cast out. Suddenly, someone knocks at his door, and the protagonist tells the person to come in. He is surprised to see a young woman he doesn't know standing at his bedroom door. The young woman introduces herself as Elvia, his new maid, and Lian senses there is something strange about her. He quickly understands that Sylvia's retirement must have some special circumstances behind it. Lian greets her and says he hopes they get along, and Elvia bows, offering her services. With a smile, the protagonist thanks her for something she can't even imagine. He says that thanks to her, he felt he and his brother grew closer, leaving the maid confused. Elvia doesn't understand what he means, but Lian just laughs and tells her not to worry. He stands up, saying they can talk later since he has an appointment. Lian grabs his bag and says he promised to go out with Lixil that day, leaving the maid behind. Far from there, in a bustling town, Lixil appears to be waiting for someone. He keeps thinking about how strange the whole situation is, trying to make sense of what is happening. He doesn't understand how his stamina remains the same, even after climbing the mountain every day. Lixil begins to wonder if this is also a side effect of the mana shock his brother suffered. He feels exhausted and knows mages don't get along well with the temple, but he needs a priest. The young mage knows he must find a way to meet a priest without getting caught. He recalls that the temple's doctrine encourages volunteer work, which would be a great excuse. When Lian arrives, he asks where they are going, and the older brother explains they need disguises. Lixil suggests a clothing store, but Lian has a much better idea in mind. With a smile, the protagonist says they are going to a magic tool shop he knows. They arrive in front of a shop with a sign that reads, "The magic shop that lacks nothing." Lian is impressed as he never knew that place existed, and Lixil says it is a secret spot. Lixil mentions there are likely no illegal items, which leaves Lian a bit suspicious. The protagonist enters the shop and begins looking at the items displayed on the shelves. He notices that despite being fascinating, many items seem to have been made for children or students. Lixil explains he discovered the shop when he was at the academy and that the items are very effective. Suddenly, the shop owner appears and greets the youths with great enthusiasm. The owner boasts that his shop has everything except for hair growth medicine. Lian explains they are looking for disguise tools, and the owner leads them to the section. The man shows a wide variety of items, saying everything there serves as a tool for disguise. He shows the cheapest items, like bracelets that make you look slimmer and insoles that increase height. Next, he points to the premium items, which can even change hair color but are much more expensive. The most expensive item is a bracelet that can completely change a person's appearance for 10 hours. Following the purchase, the two brothers leave the shop, and the owner wishes them to come back soon. Lixil asks what he thought, and Lian says the place is fun and that he will return to see more. He notices the owner slipped some extra items into the bag, likely because of the expensive purchase they made. Lian looks inside the bag and finds something he didn't expect, an item that catches his eye. It was an artisan repair kit, an item far more valuable than the other freebies he received. Lian offers all the items to his brother, but Lixil is surprised by the generous gift. Lixil accepts and suggests they use the disguises, so they enter an alley to transform. With a blue light, the magic bracelet completely alters the appearance of the two brothers. Lixil, now with brown hair, is fascinated by the flawless and perfect transformation. Lian says the disguise will be enough, and excited, the two head out into the town. Already disguised, Lian asks why they are at a mill instead of a volunteer site. Lixil explains that flour is one of the donation items, so they stop there to check. He adds that the mill also sells bread made with freshly ground flour, which is quite special. With a mysterious smile, Lixil reveals there is another reason for them to be at that mill. The mill owner, Nicholas, welcomes them warmly, saying he was expecting them. Lixil explains that Nicholas is one of the few devotees in the territory and has a large network of contacts. Lixil's plan is to get close to Nicholas to gain access to the temple and find a priest. Nicholas praises the high quality of the wheat, saying there were no grains eaten by insects. Lixil fibs, saying he saw hungry children and decided to make a donation to help them. Nicholas praises the decision and asks if he has already chosen a place, and Lixil asks for a recommendation. The mill owner becomes thoughtful, hoping Lixil will choose to donate to the temple. He suggests the temple orphanage, and Lixil celebrates internally, as his plan is working. Lixil asks how many children are at the orphanage, and Nicholas replies that there are around 30. Nicholas explains that the temple's funding was cut, and they are not in a good financial state. Since the Asura territory prioritizes magic, the noble families don't usually support the temple. Lixil realizes the mill owner hopes they, as young nobles, can help the orphanage. Suddenly, Lion gets an idea and remembers that the mill also bakes fresh bread. He suggests they bake bread themselves so the children can eat right away. Lion argues that even with the flour, the orphanage might lack other ingredients for the bread. Nicholas loves the idea and says his bakery is famous for the delicious bread it produces. Lixil reflects, realizing he was so focused on his brother that he forgot about the children's situation. He is impressed by Lion's attention to detail, acknowledging that his brother is very thoughtful. The three agree on the idea and prepare to start baking the bread for the orphanage. With everything set, they prepare to begin baking the loaves immediately. The ingredients are high quality, including whole wheat flour and 2-star olive oil. Lion looks at the ingredients and thinks that the high-quality oil will give a rich flavor to the bread. He decides to make a classic whole wheat bread, which is easy, flavorful, and something the kids will love. Nicholas prepares to begin, saying they will make a small batch first to test it out. He mixes the flour with salt, yeast, and milk, starting the process of kneading the dough. Afterwards, the dough is placed in a bowl greased with olive oil to rise and double in size. When the dough rises, he punches the air out and mixes and crushed sunflower seeds for extra flavor. With the dough ready and shaped, Nicholas says the basic process is completed. Lixil observes everything and finds the process incredibly easy compared to the complexity of magic. Nicholas asks if Lixil has already finished his part, but the young mage is still observing. Lion, covered in flour, says he is getting the hang of it and will need just a bit more time. With the loaves in the oven, Nicholas prepares to see the result of the first attempt. Upon opening the oven, they find a dark and brittle mass that didn't turn out very well. Lixil is shocked to see his burnt bread, but Nicholas consoles him, saying that is normal for the first time. Right after, Nicholas turns to the other oven and announces that young Master Lion's bread is also ready. A gloved hand opens the oven door slowly, revealing 2 perfectly golden loaves. The moment the door opens, an intense light explodes from inside, surprising everyone. A system window pops up, showing that Lion created a 1-star item and his cooking proficiency went up. Lixil stares at an entire batch of perfect bread and asks Lion how he managed to bake something so good. Nicholas holds one of the loaves, totally shocked, while Lion says he didn't do anything special. In his thoughts, the protagonist reveals he made everything with love, because the loaves are for the children. He explains he made scores in the dough to make it look nicer, and the result came out better than he expected. Nicholas realizes he misjudged Lian and that the brothers are sincerely helping the orphanage children. With a new idea in mind, Nicholas excuses himself and says he needs to go somewhere urgently. Lion agrees, thinking they disrupted the man's work, but Nicholas assures them it's nothing like that. He promises to return as fast as possible and runs out of the mill, leaving the brothers behind. Lixil worries, but Lion reassures him, saying they should keep baking the bread. Fired up, Lixil joins in on the fun and says he will work hard not to lose to his older brother. The two continue baking together, and a window shows that progress toward the baker achievement increased. With great teamwork, they advance further in the achievement, turning out batch after batch. Shortly after, Nicholas enters the mill again and announces he is back, to the youth's surprise. Lion is left speechless upon seeing that the mill owner did not return to the location alone. Accompanying Nicholas, a group of village residents enters the mill with a determined air. One of the men explains that Nicholas told them about the youth's good hearts, and everyone wanted to help. Then, a blonde woman approaches and says her husband from the forge wanted to come, but she came in his stead. Lion seems to recognize the woman, who is Lee, the blacksmith Mudu's wife, but decides not to comment. Lee places a large heavy suitcase on the floor, ready to show what she brought to help. Upon opening the suitcase, she reveals a large quantity of cheese, milk, flour, and other supplies. Another highly strong woman from the village arrives, carrying a massive pile of sacks on her back. Everyone is impressed by her strength, and someone remarks that she used to wrestle bears. Lixil is marveled by so many donations, and Lion comments on how kind the people of the territory are. Lixil reflects and feels ashamed, as his only interest was using Nicholas to meet a priest. Looking at his brother, he realizes that as long as Lion recovers, he will do great things. The protagonist smiles, genuinely happy with the help and kindness of everyone around him. Hours later, the group arrives at the temple orphanage in the Asura territory to make the delivery. A woman who works at the orphanage weeps with gratitude upon seeing the massive amount of donations. She wonders how she will ever repay the kindness, but Lion says he is just glad to be able to help. 2 children from the orphanage peek into the bread basket, smelling the delicious scent coming from inside. Shortly after, all the children gather around, excited about the fresh bread and the new clothes they received. The orphanage caretaker asks if the brothers would like to hand out the bread to the children personally. Lion hands a loaf to each child, who thanks him with a smile on their face, happy with the food. Lion gets a bit confused seeing the children's reaction while distributing the bread. He and the orphanage caretaker observe a little boy running away from the group. The boy stops and looks back with an expression of suspicion and anger on his face. The orphanage director explains to Lion that the child's name is Peter. She apologizes for the boy's behavior and asks Lion not to take his reaction personally. Peter keeps running far away while the protagonist thinks about what he heard. After a while, the director comments that they have already managed to feed almost all the children. At that moment, she notices Lion walking away with a basket and asks where he is going. With a gentle smile, the young man replies that Peter hasn't received his bread yet. The director reveals that Peter's adoption was canceled 3 times, and because of that, he rejects all donations. Lion observes the boy from afar and thinks he seems to be the same age as the Tanner's children. He also notices that the boy named Peter looks far too thin for his age. Carefully, the protagonist approaches and calls out Peter's name, who flinches from the startle. Lion sits down beside him and offers a loaf of bread, saying it's the last portion left over. He begins to describe the bread in an exaggerated way, talking about how warm, soft, and delicious it is. Suddenly, Peter's stomach begins to growl very loudly, showing that he is hungry. The boy turns bright red with embarrassment, and Lion realizes he truly needs to eat. Lion thinks to himself that if the boy were just throwing a tantrum, he would keep playing along to convince him. But since Peter is refusing to eat even though he is hungry, the young man decides he needs some space. One of the caretakers says goodbye to Lion and thanks him for all the hard work he did. After some time, Peter ends up falling asleep under the tree and wakes up a bit later. Upon waking, he thinks angrily that those hypocrites must have left by now. He grumbles that volunteers only show up to make themselves feel good and never come back to the orphanage. Peter gets startled to see that Lion is still there and shouts, asking why he didn't leave. Lion offers the bread again and says he is starving, asking if Peter isn't as well. The boy turns his face away stubbornly and Lion asks if he really isn't going to eat anything. With a smile on his face, Lion says that's fine and prepares to do something with the bread. Then, to Peter's surprise, the protagonist splits the bread in half with his hands. Lion begins eating the bread right in front of the boy, who is shocked by his attitude. He explains that since Peter didn't want it, he would eat it himself so as not to waste food. The boy is left speechless, completely confused by what is happening right in front of him. On an impulse, Peter snatches the other half of the bread and yells that he is the one who's going to eat it. Upon taking the first bite, the boy's eyes widen as he realizes how delicious the bread is. He continues eating the bread quickly while Lion observes the scene with a satisfied smile. After eating, Peter offers a piece back to Lion, showing a bit of gratitude. The protagonist smiles and hands him an entire loaf, saying it was his portion but that he could keep it. Peter looks at the bread in his hands and finds this whole situation very bizarre. He thought to himself that it was just regular bread, without any special ingredient to justify the taste. The boy cannot understand why something so simple could be so incredibly delicious. In his mind, he still believes that gestures like that are just for show and are not sincere. In his thoughts, Peter remembers that the people who were kind to him always abandoned him in the end. Eating the bread, he cries and thinks that all adults are liars and cannot be trusted. Lion then approaches and begins talking to the boy, asking if he knew something. He explains that unlike adults, Peter didn't skip a meal even though he was upset, and that was good. With a big smile, Lion says that while he was baking the loaves, he hoped someone would love them. The young man's words touch Peter's heart, whose eyes fill with tears, not knowing what to say. Lion asks if he is crying, but the boy replies it's just because the bread was so good. With his face flushed from embarrassment, Peter confirms the bread was truly delicious and nothing more. After a silent moment, the little boy stands up and thanks Lion from the bottom of his heart for the food. The protagonist then extends his pinky finger and promises he will bake more bread next time. Peter is surprised by the promise, and Lion assures him that he has never broken a promise in his entire life. With a confident look, the young man tells the little boy to remember this well in the future. The two seal the promise, and Peter says that next time he's going to eat 2 whole loaves. Lion jokes with him, saying he will need to bake a lot of bread if the boy eats that much. The orphanage director observes the scene from afar and gets very emotional over what she is seeing. She thinks to herself that it had been a very long time since she saw Peter smile in such a genuine and happy way. The woman feels ashamed for not connecting with the children in the same way Lion did. In her thoughts, she believes that a person as sincere as him deserves God's blessing. At the end of the day, the children say goodbye to the brothers, asking them to come back soon. As they were leaving, the director asked them to stay at the orphanage for a little longer. She explains that she contacted a priest urgently, and he is on his way to pray for the children. The director suggests they receive a blessing prayer from the priest before going away. Lixel celebrates in silence as his plan worked and accepts the director's offer. The woman then guides the 2 brothers into a room so they can wait for the priest. The sound of an approaching carriage indicates that the priest is about to arrive at the location. Through the carriage window, a man with glasses observes the orphanage as he approaches. In a flashback, Lixel asks Lion to postpone the meeting with the priest, worried about his safety. Back in the present, Lixil says he needs to return to the mansion, leaving Lion confused. He says goodbye in a lively manner, using his baking practice as an excuse to leave. Lixil thinks everything worked out and that he needs a prayer for his brother, but fears the priest's ill will. Because of this, he decides he needs to find the priest first to check his intentions. The priest introduces himself as Licht, and a system window suggests he is the high priest of the temple. Licht mentions he heard from the director that Lixil wanted to be an anonymous benefactor, and the youth confirms it. The priest finds Lixil younger than expected and thinks he must be someone important in the clergy. Lich gives thanks on behalf of the temple, but Lixil says the credit also belongs to the others who helped. The youth clarifies that it was his older brother, Lion, who had the idea and truly dedicated himself. Lixil confirms to the priest that his brother was the young man who needed to go home early. He explains that Lion has had highly fragile health since childhood and suffers from a grave illness. So, Lixil confesses that his true objective was to bring his brother to meet the priest. Lich smiles and says it is a pity that such a righteous person is suffering from an illness. Lich reveals that he also snuck out of the temple, so he has a condition for helping out. Lixil grows apprehensive as he cannot read the priest's expression and fears a refusal. The priest finally responds, scheduling a meeting for 3 days in the future. Lich asks Lixil to return with his brother at this exact same time so he can assist them. Filled with hope, Lixil rushes to his family's mansion and calls out for his brother. Lion is awake and Lixil scolds him for not resting, but the youth says he couldn't sleep. Lion asks the reason for such a rush, and Lixil shares that the priest agreed to check his condition. In his laboratory, Lion is surprised, and Lixil says the priest wants to help out of gratitude. Lion thinks to himself that he isn't truly sick, just a bit weak because of his past. He reflects that he has been exercising and that the offer isn't bad, so he decides to accept the help. With a smile, Lion agrees to go, leaving Lixil highly happy with the positive response. Lixil warns that, strangely enough, the priest scheduled the meeting for dawn. 3 days later at the orphanage, Lian analyzes a high-quality holy water made by Lit. At that moment, Lixil calls his brother, who turns around and sees the priest Lit right behind. Lion greets the priest with respect, and Lich blesses him, saying the pleasure is his. With a calm smile, the priest invites the two to sit down and chat for a bit. Lion takes the opportunity and says he has a question to ask the priest. He asks if there is a special reason for the meeting to be scheduled so early, at dawn. Lich reveals that he had a dream about the two brothers, leaving Lion and Lixil highly surprised. He explains that priests with high holy power sometimes receive prophetic dreams from God. Lixil asks what the dream was about, but Lich says it was nothing grand. In the dream, children were sleeping in a field, and the two brothers were watching over them nearby. The priest says the dream was so pleasant that he wanted to meet them to confirm something. He wanted to understand what kind of people they were, those who appeared in his revelation. In his thoughts, Lich analyzes Lixil, noting that he is a young and elegant mage. He suspects that the brothers' treatment is just a pretext to spy on the temple. The priest then offers to begin the treatment, and Lixil steps out of the room. With everything ready, Lich warns he is going to begin, and Lion says he is in his care. A strong green energy emanates from the priest and completely envelopes Lion's body. Suddenly, Lich halts the treatment, a look of total confusion on his face. He doesn't understand why the blessing had no effect, since his holy power is strong. The priest tries again, wondering if he made some mistake the first time. Then, Lich is shocked to realize something unbelievable about Lion's condition. The protagonist smiles and says that, thanks to the blessing, his body is feeling much better. Lion asks the priest to stop, saying that was already enough, but Lich is perplexed. In his mind, he knows there are only 3 reasons for a priest's blessing to fail. The first is when a stronger mage rejects the healing, the second is when the person is already healthy, and the third reason is when the person was born with a very short life expectancy. Lich turns to Lion and says that if he needs help in the future, he can count on him. Unexpectedly, the priest grabs Lion's hand with great force and determination. Lich asks Lion to come to the temple and say his name whenever he feels a pain that keeps him from sleeping. With a flame in his eyes, the priest guarantees he will help him no matter what, and Lion agrees. Lixil says goodbye and thanks him for the consideration, and Lich says they will see each other again soon. The priest watches the youth walk away, maintaining a serious posture and a calculating look. While walking, Lion feels a shiver and doesn't understand why the priest's promise left him so suspicious. Sometime later, the brothers arrive back at the Grand Astery Castle under a beautiful rainbow. Lixil comments that Lion's condition seems better, and the protagonist agrees the outing was worth it. Lion thinks to himself that holy power is a great skill, as it cured all the H's from baking bread all night. Suddenly, he notices that Lixil has very dark circles under his eyes, but the younger brother says he is fine. Lixil says goodbye, mentioning he needs to do his mana training, leaving Lion surprised. Lion worries that his brother will suffer later if he keeps pushing himself so hard without resting. A maid observes Lixil and thinks that the hair seems to be even busier lately. Lion talks with the maid, and she suggests he speak with the patriarch about Lixil's schedule. The protagonist gets an idea, realizing his grandfather must also be worried about the situation. The maid suggests he visit the patriarch with a sweet treat, and Lion loves her suggestion. Shortly after, Lion and the maid are in the kitchen, ready to prepare something special. With skill, the young man begins rolling out the dough with a rolling pin, starting the cookie preparation. He thanks the maid, whom he calls Sylvia, and asks if their grandfather likes sweets. The maid corrects him, saying her name is Elvia, and that the patriarch will eat anything he makes. Lion smiles and says that even so, he hopes his grandfather likes what he is preparing. Suddenly, the young man gets a new idea, leaving Elvia a bit confused by his reaction. Elvia grows curious upon seeing the secret ingredient the young master fetched to use in the recipe. He places some sweet potatoes on the table and confirms he is going to add them to the cookies. Elvia finds the combination odd, but Lion hopes his grandfather realizes how delicious it is. He explains he is going to use the sweet potato instead of sugar for a more natural and healthy sweet. With everything ready, Lion moves on to the next step of the recipe with a smile on his face. The young man uses several cute cutters to shape the cookies into animal and star forms. After shaping all the dough, he places the cookie trays carefully inside the oven. As soon as they are ready, a system window pops up with a description of the special sweet potato cookies. Lion is surprised to see that the food has a potion effect, and Elvia is impressed by his talent. Elvia encourages him to taste one of the cookies to see how the final result turned out. Upon tasting it, he finds the flavor better than any cookie from his past life, and his cooking level rises. Elvia explains that sweets relieve fatigue, and since that one isn't overly sweet, the patriarch will like it. Lion thanks Elvia for the help and offers to divide the cookies into portions for everyone. The maid offers to do that by herself so the young master can finally rest. But Lion smiles and says he isn't finished yet, as he needs to do one more thing in the kitchen. He turns to the ingredients and thinks that he cannot open his inventory in front of Elvia. Since he reached cooking level 3, he decides to make a drink to create a synergy effect. In his inventory, he selects the ingredients to create a training support drink. The recipe for the crimson drink appears, and Lion thinks that his grandfather and Lixil will love the gift. Lion finds the recipe's ingredients familiar, but decides to focus on the perfect pairing for the cookies. He checks the ingredients and sees that the fresh oranges and lemons are high quality. With everything prepared on the kitchen counter, the young man gets ready to start the new recipe. First, he washes and cuts the fruits into thin slices and places a health potion to simmer over low heat. After the fruits cook for a bit, he adds star anise and waits for the flavor to be extracted. When a fragrant aroma begins to rise from the pot, he strains the hot drink through a sieve. To finalize the potion, the young man adds a drop of rosemary oil, changing the liquid's color. The training support drink is ready, and Lion finds the smell similar to that of a mulled wine. He tastes the drink and likes the flavor, so he decides to combine everything on a tray with the cookies. A system window pops up, describing the set's effects, which reduces fatigue and improves training. The system congratulates him for creating his first combo and rewards him with 3,000 shillings for the achievement. With the tray ready, Lion takes off his apron and prepares to make the special delivery. He looks at the cookies and the drink, eager to go see his grandfather and show what he made. In his office, the patriarch of the Asura family is sitting at his desk, a serious expression on his face. He sees Lion entering with the tray and scolds him, saying the servant should carry that for him. Lion smiles and explains that he insisted on bringing it personally because it was a gift for his grandfather. He places the tray on the desk and mentions that he prepared the drink and cookies for them to eat together. The patriarch is surprised to learn that his grandson prepared all that by himself, and the youth confirms it. Lion says he thought it would be a fun way to show off his new skills in the kitchen. The grandfather picks up one of the bear-shaped cookies and observes it in silence for an instant. Upon taking the first bite, he is shocked by the cookie's texture, which melts in his mouth. The flavor of the sweet potato and banana spreads, creating a special and unique sweetness for him. A window alerts that Lion rose to cooking level 4 by pleasing someone with his food. The patriarch then looks at his grandson seriously and tells him to say what he truly wants. He asserts that Lion didn't come all the way there just to deliver cookies, and the youth confirms it with a smile. Lion comments that he heard his coming-of-age ceremony will take place soon. He asks if Lixil couldn't rest a bit until the date of the ceremony arrives. The protagonist explains that his younger brother's training schedule is far too heavy. He asks his grandfather to reduce the training intensity so that the entire family can participate in the ceremony. The patriarch is moved to see Lion's concern for his brother and fills with pride. He thinks about how the two brothers, who previously seemed distant, now share such a strong bond. The grandfather agrees to the request and says Lixil will have self-directed training until the ceremony. The patriarch then asks if Lion doesn't have any other request for his ceremony. Lion says he doesn't, and the grandfather thinks about how humble his grandson is and how he lacks any greed. The coming-of-age ceremony is a highly important event that goes beyond a simple ritual. During it, the family must grant any wish of the heir, even if it is the rarest jewel in the world. The patriarch realizes that if his grandson isn't asking for anything, it means something else. He understands that Lion is leaving the choice of the gift in his hands so that he can surprise him. Lion says goodbye and leaves the office, leaving his grandfather behind with his thoughts. The patriarch watches his grandson leave and continues to reflect on the ideal gift for the ceremony. Patriarch Asura keeps thinking about what gift would be perfect for his grandson's ceremony. Meanwhile, Lion leaves the office and wonders what his grandfather meant by preparing well. In his room, Lixil is surrounded by piles of books and looks completely drained from his studies. Suddenly, Lion bursts into Lixil's room, who gets startled and knocks all the papers off his desk. The protagonist looks at the mess and jokes, saying he didn't know his brother lived in such a chaotic place. Lixil's face turns bright red with embarrassment, and he says he didn't want Lion to see his room in that state. Lion then shows the cookies and says he brought a snack since he figured his brother was tired. The two sit down to talk, and Lixel grabs one of the cookies to taste the special snack. Upon taking the first bite, the young mage is surprised and praises the flavor, saying it is delicious. He comments that his older brother has a lot of talent with his hands, and Lion responds modestly. The protagonist takes advantage of the moment to share that Lixel can relax until the coming of age ceremony. He explains that he secured their grandfather's permission because he noticed his brother was drained. Lixel is highly moved by Lion's concern and thanks him from the bottom of his heart for the gesture. Lion jokes and asks if the fatigue was because of love letters, but the youth quickly denies it. The younger brother reveals that his worry, in truth, is because of Lion's ceremony. The protagonist is surprised and understands that Lixel is referring to the family's special ritual. The Asura family ceremony includes a ritual known as the Library Labyrinth. The labyrinth becomes infinite if forced, but whoever reaches the end receives a special item. Lion realizes Lixel is worried because he lacks mana and reassures him, saying it is a formality. But Lixel interrupts him and says the problem isn't the ritual, but rather the ceremony clothes. The protagonist is confused, not understanding why the clothes would be such a big problem. Then, Lixel asks if his brother has already seen the outfit their grandfather prepared for the ceremony. The young mage shows a drawing of the attire, and Lion is completely terrified by what he sees. Lixel reveals that the patriarch has terrible taste in fashion, and the outfit is a total disaster of colors. Lion despairs and says he cannot wear that, especially as an 8th Circle Archmage. He doesn't understand how his grandfather dressed well up until now, and Lixel explains that Elvia always stopped him. The youth realizes the maid was the guardian of good taste and decides to find a solution. Sometime later, Ling goes to the village and finds Lee, the blacksmith's wife, with her children. He hands over a bag of cookies he made, and the children get super excited with the gift. The children taste the treats and Leah asks the reason for the visit, so Lion says he needs a favor. The woman grows curious, and the protagonist asks about the tailor who helped him at the orphanage. He asks for her to introduce him to the man, but Lee's reaction leaves him a bit confused. In a flashback, Lion recalls having observed the tailor's incredible skills at work. The man adjusted the children's clothes on the spot and transformed scraps of fabric into new pieces. Lion explains he needs someone with that talent, and Leah says she can introduce him, but there is a problem. She doesn't give many details and just tells Lion to go to the location to understand the situation. Following the instructions, the protagonist arrives at a place that looks completely abandoned. He looks at the broken wooden sign and can barely read the establishment's name. The sign sways perilously, and the youth begins to doubt if he truly is in the right place. Upon entering, he finds a dark place full of mannequins, wondering why a master would have a shop like this. Lion enters the dark shop and calls out for someone, and a gloomy voice greets him from the shadows. Suddenly, the man illuminates himself and rushes in his direction, asking joyfully if he is a customer. The tailor recognizes him from the orphanage, but finds the color of his hair and eyes strange. The protagonist pulls back his hood and explains he is the eldest grandson of the Asura family and was disguised. The man smiles and says he understands, since nobles like him must have their reasons for that. He asks what brings such an important person there, and Lion replies that he is looking for a skilled tailor. The tailor is shocked and says a family like the Asura wouldn't need his services. He invites Lion to come in and sit down so they can talk with more calm. Inside, Lion sees a shelf full of awards, including the most prestigious grand prize of the empire. The man invites him to sit and says he will fetch some tea, but Lion says he brought cookies for them to eat. The tailor serves the tea and apologizes for his situation not being ideal to receive a visitor. Lion offers the cookies and says he prepared them himself, leaving the man highly surprised. The tailor remembers the incredible bread Lion made for the orphanage and grows curious about the cookie. With great expectation, he prepares to taste the bear-shaped cookie. Upon taking the first bite, he is shocked by the texture and flavor, finding everything incredible. He describes the cookie as something that starts crunchy and melts in the mouth with a pure flavor. But then, the sensation shifts and transforms into something completely different and unexpected. The flavor becomes a story of a prince falling in love with a country girl. The tailor turns flushed and emotional, feeling that the word delicious is not enough to describe it. With wide eyes, he shouts that isn't a cookie, but rather a true work of art. Lion observes satisfactorily and thinks the cookie's qualities remind him of himself. The tailor recovers and praises the young master for the wonderful snack he prepared. He says he almost cried with emotion, and that the cookie filled him with endless inspiration. The man introduces himself as Andre and promises to answer any question with total honesty. Andre assumes the youth wants to order clothes, and Lion confirms that is exactly it. The tailor says he is the best at his craft, but that there is a major problem in hiring him. He warns that if other nobles find out about him, Lion might become a laughingstock. Andre reveals he is an illegitimate son of a noble family, and because of that, he is despised by everyone. He explains that the nobles abandoned him, and now many refuse to do business with him. The tailor suggests Lion lie about the clothes' origin, but the youth asks to see his work. Andre says he only has commoners' clothes, but Lion insists, saying he just wants to see his skill. With a sigh, Andre draws back a curtain, and what Lion sees on the other side leaves him astounded. The tailor says they are just pieces he sells to his neighbors, but Lion thinks it's all incredible. System windows pop up, showing that the simple clothes have 1 or 2 stars of quality. Lion looks at the wonderful clothes, shocked to think that that is Andre's reality. He realizes that for a simple fabric to have 2 stars, the other conditions must be perfect. The protagonist imagines what Andrew could create if he had access to high-quality fabrics. Lion then declares he wants to wear clothes made by Andrew at his coming-of-age ceremony. The tailor says it would be an honor, but worries about the young master's reputation. The protagonist holds up 3 fingers and says he will need 3 outfits for the ceremony. Andrew stares at Lion with a look full of doubt and concern, not knowing whether to accept the proposal. But the protagonist guarantees he will take full responsibility and challenges him to have ambition. The tailor thinks about the chance to create beautiful clothes with fine fabrics and show off all his talent. With his heart racing, Andrew accepts the offer and tells the young master just to give the order. Full of energy, the tailor grabs his tools and asks what kind of clothes Lion desires. The youth describes that he wants something elegant with a sense of unity, but without looking old-fashioned. Suddenly, Andrew realizes the patriarch will also wear his clothes and asks if Lion is sure. With a confident smile, Lion says the opinion of other nobles doesn't matter to his family. The tailor understands that no one would dare criticize the Asura family, which is almost like royalty. With renewed confidence, Andrew goes back to his desk and begins drawing with total concentration. He introduces himself formally as Andrew and promises he will give his best to create the outfits. Andrew asks if Lion has a fabric in mind, but the youth admits he doesn't understand the subject. Then Lion hands over a large book, and the tailor is shocked to see the legendary Asura fabric catalog. With trembling hands, he asks permission to open it, and Lion tells him to look through it at his leisure. Carefully, Andrew opens the ancient catalog, revealing secrets guarded for generations. A golden light emanates from the book, and the tailor is left breathless upon seeing the first page. The catalog shows fabrics from all over the continent, including the rare elf hair woven by few elves. He also sees the fairy breath created by mages and is surprised that those fabrics truly exist. Lion asks if he liked anything, and Andrew says the problem is not having a fabric he doesn't like. Suddenly, the tailor stops on a specific page, a look of surprise on his face. He explains that a young lady used to like that fabric, but it was impossible to find on the market. The tailor never forgets a fabric he touched, but the catalog had no information about it. Lion approaches to look and analyzes the fabric sample with attention and curiosity. A system window reveals the fabric is the Archmage's unconditional love, made for his daughter. Lion connects the information and realizes the young lady was his mother and the Archmage was his grandfather. He decides they must use that fabric, and Andrew agrees on the spot, saying it is possible. Fired up, the tailor prepares to start taking measurements to begin the work. At that moment, Lixel enters the shop, saying it took him a bit to gather some supplies. Lion gets confused by the word supplies and notices there is a lot of noise outside the shop. Looking through the window, he and Andrew are shocked by the scene they find on the street. An entire caravan of wagons is stopped in front of the shop, unloading equipment and materials. Lixel explains he heard about Lion's interest in the tailor and decided to provide proper support. He says that, since it is his brother's only coming-of-age ceremony, it needed to be special. With a smile, Lixel asserts that that level of backing is the minimum he could do. Lion asks Andrew if he prefers the new tools, but the tailor shakes his head. With tears in his eyes, Andrew shouts with happiness and asks to swap out all his tools. Sometime later, with the measurements taken, Andrew thanks Lion for his patience during the process. The tailor promises to create a masterpiece, but the protagonist asks him to take it easy. Lion then says he has one more favor to ask and approaches with a mysterious smile. He asks if Andrew could teach him how to sew, leaving the tailor and Lixel in total shock. Lixel and Andrew worry about the idea of Lion learning to sew, but he guarantees everything is fine. The protagonist explains he doesn't want to do anything difficult, just get a basic grasp of the craft. He says that by understanding the techniques, he will be able to better appreciate Andrew's hard work and passion. The tailor is highly moved and agrees that every stitch and every cut carries an intention. With his heart touched, Andrew promises he will teach everything he knows without hiding any secret. He decides to take Lixel's measurements first and tells Lion to explore the shop in the meantime. The scene changes, showing the outside of the tailor's workshop during a peaceful late afternoon. Lion walks through the shop and admires the clothes, thinking about how incredible they are even after looking several times. He finds a pants mold and wonders how Andrew managed to create such good pieces with low-quality fabric. The youth picks up the piece and thinks about what the sewing process would be like, considering trying on his own. He decides that, since he lacks experience, it would be best to start with hand sewing instead of using a machine. Then Lion remembers an artisan repair kit he received as a freebie at a magic shop. Excited, he thinks that is the perfect opportunity to use the magical item he stored away. Upon activating the kit, one of the old needles glows and transforms, looking completely new. Lion is fascinated to see that the needle renews itself and even threads itself automatically. With the magic needle in hand, he sits down on one of the worktables to begin. The sun sets through the window while Lion concentrates fully on his first sewing project. He sews the fabric carefully and is surprised to realize that the activity is quite fun. The youth thought he would get frustrated, but the manual labor ends up being surprisingly calming. Light guides appear on the fabric, showing where to sew, and he wonders if it's the magic tool's power. He finds the process easier than he imagined, and a system shows the item is already 80% complete. Suddenly, Lixel and Andrew return, and Lion is startled by the unexpected arrival of the two. Andrew is impressed to see the young master started with hand sewing and praises his skill. The tailor analyzes the stitching, and though it is still a bit crooked, he considers it excellent for a first time. With excitement, Andrew runs through the workshop, saying he remembered something he had forgotten. He explains that hand sewing is the foundation of formal wear, something he almost forgot. Andrew plunges into his own world of design, and Lion comments that he seems to have lost himself in his ideas. The protagonist suggests to Lixel that they return to the mansion for now so as not to disturb him. He reminds his brother that the two have a dinner scheduled with the family patriarchs that night. An assistant informs Patriarch Asura that the young masters have arrived for dinner. In his office, the grandfather finishes writing and says he understands, preparing for the meeting. The patriarch walks with his assistant through one of the mansion's grand, luxurious corridors. The assistant comments on how rare it is for the three to dine together, and the grandfather says moments like this are necessary. He explains that he doesn't like just working, but does so because it is the only way to protect his grandsons. The patriarch complains about the imperial family, which still burdens him with work even 50 years after the war. He vents, saying he only wanted to spend more time with his grandsons in the lifespan he has left. The grandfather asserts that, as patriarch, he cannot step away now that the hairs are gathered. Upon arriving at the dining room, he thinks that his grandson's warmth is making him soft with age. He wishes to live out the rest of his days in peace with the treasures his daughter left behind. For that to happen, he decides he cannot let anyone discover Lion's true potential. Lion looks at the lavish dining table and thinks it is a bit of an exaggeration for a family meal. Lixel explains that he made a special request to the chef since it had been a very long time since they last gathered. The protagonist reflects that in the past, he barely ate and his grandfather always had dinner at the palace. This means that, for all this time, his younger brother Lixel had been eating all by himself. Lion realizes that his brother must have felt incredibly lonely during all those years. With a new perspective, he tells Lixel that they should have moments like this more often. Lion thinks about how difficult it must have been for his brother to endure everything alone for so long. He decides that from that day on, he will ask the patriarchs to spend more time with the family. With a determined smile, the protagonist promises himself that Lixel will no longer eat alone. At that moment, Patriarch Asura arrives in the dining room, joining his two grandsons. He sits at the table and invites the young men to begin the meal, and everyone agrees. The sound of silverware on the plates marks the beginning of a family dinner after a very long time. The patriarch asks Lixel about the progress of his duties, and the young man assures him that everything is in order. An awkward silence takes over the table as they eat, with nothing left to say. In his thoughts, Lion gets annoyed by his grandfather's cold attitude, as he didn't even ask about his health. He realizes that this isn't the mood his brother wanted and decides to break the ice. Lion then directly asks his grandfather if he has ever created any fabric for his mother. The patriarch stops eating, takes a sip of wine, and replies that he does not know what he is talking about. The protagonist smiles, realizing that, just as he imagined, talking about his mother makes his grandfather uncomfortable. Calmly, Lion begins to recount that he met a tailor and found a unique fabric in the castle. He asks if Lixel remembers the glowing fabric, and the younger brother confirms that he does. The young man continues, saying that the tailor told him a young lady used to love that fabric. Lion concludes that, since the fabric is identical to the family's, he figured the young lady was his mother. The patriarch falls silent, and Lixel thinks that the topic of their mother was what the family avoided the most. The atmosphere in the dining room becomes heavy, with visible tension between the grandfather and the grandsons. In his thoughts, Lion reflects that you cannot bury the past and ignore it forever. He decides to use the family clothes as an excuse to mend the relationship and start a conversation. The patriarch then breaks the silence, addressing Lion in a serious and direct manner. He confirms his grandson's suspicions and reveals that he was the one who created that fabric. Surprised, Lion asks for the reason, and his grandfather stands up from the table to explain his story. He says that, as a father, it was only natural to worry about his only daughter and want to protect her. The patriarch shares that he created a magical fabric with protective enchantments to look after her. With a distant gaze, he is surprised that the fabric still exists after so much time. Lixel listens to the story and thinks that the fabric was meant for Lion's mother, feeling deeply moved. The patriarch notices that Lixel has always been curious about his mother and feels guilty about his loneliness. Lion then reveals that he plans to use the fabric to make the garments for the ceremony, and his grandfather approves. The protagonist takes advantage of the moment and asks when the patriarch will be free for a visit from the tailor. The grandfather gets confused, and Lion explains that he will also have to wear one of the outfits with them. Lixel supports the idea and suggests bringing the tailor to the mansion to make things easier for their grandfather. The patriarch finally agrees and says that, since Lion is in charge, he will follow his lead. With his grandfather's permission, Lion thinks with relief that he won't have to worry about his poor taste. He smiles because now he can relax and focus entirely on the preparations for the ceremony. From that moment on, all the preparations for the big event began to run smoothly. Thanks to Andrew's visits, the production of the formal clothes for the family was going perfectly. The decoration of the entire mansion for the ceremony was also on schedule and looked more beautiful by the day. With the support of his grandfather and Lixel, the protagonist suddenly found himself with absolutely nothing to do. But thanks to all this free time he gained, Lion was able to dedicate himself to a new activity. He managed to focus all his time on learning the tailoring skill, but something felt wrong. As he sewed, he thought he should have received a system notification by now. A window appeared only for his proficiency level, but the tailoring talent was not unlocked. He didn't understand the reason, as he did a decent job even without using a sewing machine. With a bad feeling, a terrible doubt began to cross the protagonist's mind. He despairs over the possibility of simply being someone with no talent for tailoring. Trying to calm himself down, he thinks that if he lacks talent for something, it would more likely be in the kitchen. The young man wonders what the difference is between cooking and sewing, whether it is the tools or the mentors. Completely frustrated without answers, Leon screams and wonders what the real problem is. At that moment, the maid Elvia enters the room and lets him know that Andre is there to see him. Lion asks if the clothes are ready, but Elvia says the tailor's expression looks strange. The protagonist gets worried, and the maid confirms that it looked like something went terribly wrong. Elvia finishes speaking, saying that the situation seemed truly awful and concerning for the tailor. She mentions that she took Andre to the reception room and asks if the young master would like to see him. Upon opening the door to the room, Lion asks what is wrong but is caught off guard by the scene. A brilliant light and incredible setting leave him completely speechless for a moment. The reception room had been transformed into a luxurious tailor shop, leaving Lion shocked. He doesn't understand how Andre brought all of that by himself and sees no apparent major problem. Lion then finds the tailor in the middle of the room and says he was waiting for him. Andre shows one of the suits and asks if the young master would like to try the piece on. The protagonist begins to get dressed, adjusting the white jacket with purple and gold details. He looks at himself in the mirror, and a system window reveals that the suit is a 3-star work. Lion notices that Andre does not look happy and asks if something is wrong, and the tailor confirms it. A quest window pops up, stating that something is missing from the suit and he needs to figure out what it is. Looking at his reflection, Lion suddenly realizes what is missing and gets an idea. He points to his own neck and says he feels that part of the outfit looks empty. Andre explains that the suit is complete, but it lacks a focal point, like a tie or a scarf. The protagonist understands that he needs to think about these details and begins to plan the accessories. He decides that his grandfather will wear a tie and that, for Lixel, a body would be better. Andre then approaches and says he needs to ask a favor of young Master Lion. He asks for Leon himself to put the finishing touches on the family suits by adding the embroidery. The protagonist is completely shocked by the master tailor's unexpected request. Andre offers to teach him everything, but Lion interrupts him, still surprised by the proposal. Lion is shocked and says it would be disrespectful for him to alter the work of a master like Andre. He asks if there is a good reason for the tailor to take such a risk and ask for something like that. Andre reveals that while taking the patriarch's measurements, he discovered that Lion's mother was one of his clients. In a memory, the tailor recalls how Lion's grandfather thanked him for his work. Andre looks at the patriarch and realizes how important that conversation had been to him. He understands that both in the past and now, making clothes for the ones you love means a lot to the Lord. The tailor explains that, since the fabric was made by the grandfather, the finishing touches need to come from Lion's hands. He says this adds something that not even a master tailor could put into the piece. Lion realizes that this is not an easy decision for an artisan who takes pride in his work. With Andre's trust, the protagonist accepts the challenge and promises to give his best to the task. Andre invites him to sit down and start deciding on the details and designs of the pieces. The young man sits at the table and says that, actually, he already has an idea in mind for the outfits. He draws a body for Lixel and a tie for his grandfather, and Andre thinks the idea is excellent. The tailor then asks what kind of design Lion himself would like to wear to the ceremony. The protagonist says he will decide later, and Andre suggests they start practicing with a tie. Andre explains the parts of a tie, showing how every detail is important for the final shape. Lion laughs at the terms and jokes not to talk about swords in front of his grandfather, who does not like the subject. The young man asks if he uses interfacing, and Andre says it is not necessary with that silk fabric. He explains that the high-quality fabric keeps its shape perfectly when it is ironed. With an excited and energetic smile, Andre declares that they are ready to begin. Sometime later, the 3 suits for the ceremony are displayed on mannequins in the workroom. Lion holds his first attempt at a tie, which the system calls overly ambitious. Andre suggests they move on to embroidery, and Lion says he wants to incorporate the family crest. He draws leaves connected to a branch, symbolizing that the family will always be united. Andre is impressed by the deep meaning and agrees to embroider with that idea in mind. The tailor explains that texture is the most important part to make the embroidery look natural. Lion understands that he needs to practice, so he asks for 3 days to finalize all the work. With a proud smile, Andre says he completely trusts the young master with the task. Days later, Lee analyzes a simple tie he made, thinking about how he sewed non-stop. He mentions that he used all of Andre's practice patterns and even started drawing his own. The protagonist reveals that he purposely did not use the magic kit so he could improve his skills. A system window shows that his tie has improved a bit, but he still thinks it is not easy. With his shoulders and eyes aching, Leon stretches, feeling the fatigue from the hard work. He stands up and looks at the piece of clothing on the table, with an exhausted expression on his face. But his determination returns, and he tells himself that he cannot give up now that he is getting the hang of it. Suddenly, while holding the fabric tightly, something different happens in his hands. A system notification pops up, announcing that a new tailoring talent has blossomed. His proficiency reaches the apprentice level, and Lion celebrates, saying that he finally did it. Now with the talent unlocked, his speed increases, and he quickly reaches level 2. An achievement is unlocked, and his proficiency rises to level 3 while he irons the fabric. Lion has a revelation and realizes that the awakening of a crafting talent holds a secret. He understands that the key point is how much he actually needs the item he is trying to create. The young man remembers that when he awakened the blacksmithing talent, he needed the tools to create potions. And when he awakened the cooking talent, he needed the oil to make bread and snacks. So, he realizes that at that moment, the thing he needs most is money for his projects. The protagonist is happy that he did not use the magic kit, because now he can create good things without help. He manages to create a high-quality tie, and a notification states that its value has increased with the artisan's touch. Excited, Leon holds the glowing needle and prepares to add the final embroidery to the piece. With the embroidery finished, the tie becomes a 3-star item, a true masterpiece. The system praises him, saying it is an incredible piece for an apprentice tailor, and Lion places it on the mannequin. Upon pairing the tie with the suit, the two pieces evolve into a unique set with a synergy effect. The suit becomes a 4-star set, a masterpiece of a master tailor, rare throughout the entire empire. The system reveals the effects of the set, which protects against impacts and maintains the aura of the Asura family. A new Grand Tailor achievement appears, and Lion realizes he can complete it quickly. With calmness and concentration, he prepares to make the other 2 pieces for Lixil and his grandfather. He finishes Lixil's body, completing 2/3 of the tailoring achievement. Now the only problem left is his own suit, which needs an accessory. Lion thinks about what kind of tie to wear so it won't look too casual or look like the others. Suddenly he gets an idea and decides to create a stick tie, which is fastened with a jewel. He draws the model and understands that the key point of the accessory will be the jewel in the center. The young man goes to a jewelry box and begins to search for the perfect stone for his creation. He rummages through the jewelry his grandfather used to wear and finds a purple stone that catches his attention. Lion holds the jewel and realizes that its color is exactly the same as his family's eyes. He fastens the jewel to the tie and the accessory glows, finishing the suit perfectly. The Grand Tailor achievement is unlocked, and the system rewards him with 15,000 shillings. Surprised, Leon sees that he also earned a bonus of 10,000 shillings for his impossible achievement. With the extra money, he finally unlocks the system shop and gains 25,000 shillings all at once. Excited about the new shop, he prepares to explore but is interrupted by a shout. Lixil bursts into the room and asks why Lion is still suing, since the ceremony is the very next day. The younger brother says he heard that Lion stayed awake for 3 consecutive days and worries about him. With a dark look, Lixil demands that his older brother go to bed immediately. Elvia enters the room, agrees with Lixil, and throws Lion over her shoulder to take him to bed. The protagonist screams and begs to take at least one look at the system shop that just opened. The scene changes to the next day, showing Castle Astra preparing for the grand ceremony. Now ready, Leon walks down a corridor with Elvia, and she compliments how handsome he looks. The maid says that the tie in particular suits him very well, and Lion feels relieved. He thinks that all his hard work was worth it, even though he fainted from exhaustion the day before. Elvia looks at him with a mysterious smile, keeping her thoughts to herself for a moment. She reflects on how time flies, remembering when Lion was just a sick and fragile baby. At that moment, Lixil approaches and asks if his brother managed to sleep well during the night. Wearing his new suit, Lion meets Lixil in the corridor and asks if he was waiting for him. The younger brother, also looking very elegant, says that from that moment on, he will be Lion's escort. Lixil then opens the large doors of the main hall, revealing the party that awaited them. The hall is packed with guests, and Lixil says that on this day, Leon is the main character. The venue is stunningly decorated, with grand chandeliers and an orchestra playing in the background. The guests comment on the luxurious decoration, saying it looks more glamorous than an imperial banquet. A man says that the rumors about the poor relationship between Marquis Patrick and his grandson seem false. Suddenly, a servant announces the entrance of Marquis Astra and the young master, drawing everyone's attention. Lion's grandfather Patrick enters the hall accompanied by Lixil, and the guests recognize them. With a confident smile on his face, one of the nobles prepares for the entrance of the honoree. Right after Lion Astra, the main character of the evening, is announced and enters the hall. The protagonist walks through the hall with elegance while the guests applaud him enthusiastically. Some guests whisper, saying that Lion does not look as majestic as Lixil. Patriarch Patrick calls Lion, who approaches and responds respectfully to his grandfather. Patrick points to a group of nobles and warns his grandson not to associate with them. He tells Lion to prepare himself mentally, as he will soon need to announce the start of the party. With a smile, the young man assures him that he will not embarrass the family and realizes that his grandfather cares about him. Lion walks toward the stage and thinks that his only goal there is quite simple and direct. He introduces himself to everyone as Lion Astra and announces that he is finally coming of age. His true objective is merely to leave a good impression of his family on all the guests. Lixil is surprised to hear his brother's speech, which thanks everyone for their presence. The younger brother wonders when Lion became someone with such a reliable image. 2 female guests comment to each other, saying that the young master Leon manages to attract everyone's attention. They agree that, although he looks ordinary, his clothes make him look very special. The other guests also notice the suit and comment that it elevates the person wearing it. A noblewoman wonders which designer created the outfit, and another says that no known tailor took on the job. Patrick and Lixil watch from afar, and the grandfather thinks that his grandson used his head to plan everything. Lixil wonders if his brother calculated everything, and his grandfather comments that he is a very perceptive boy. Lion finishes his speech and tells everyone to relax and enjoy the party until the next day. With a big smile, he wishes everyone a wonderful party, and the guests applaud him. Lixil runs up to Lion and congratulates him, saying his speech was truly incredible. He asks when Lion prepared everything, and the protagonist says he just kept things simple. Patrick approaches and praises Lion for showing such dignity even without having mana or an aura. With a proud smile, the grandfather says he did a good job, and Lion thanks him for the compliment. The two brothers smile and decide it is time to enjoy the banquet that was prepared. The party continues with plenty of good food and classical music, creating a very pleasant atmosphere. At a reserved table, Patrick asks Lion if he has already decided what to take to the labyrinth ritual. Lion takes a sip of wine and remembers that the items he takes can change what he will obtain. He knows that mages receive spells or knowledge, but since he is not one, the outcome is a mystery. The protagonist holds his glass and begins to think about what he will do, leaving an air of suspense in the room. With a smile, Lion answers his grandfather that he plans to take one of the potions he made himself. The patriarch does not seem very convinced, but Lixil supports him, finding the choice interesting. Lion explains that since he has no talent for magic, he will take the best item he's ever created. He thinks that even the clothes were made by Andre, so the potion is the right choice. The grandfather agrees and says that the labyrinth will teach Lion the appropriate knowledge for his skills. Then, Patrick asks one more question with a serious and direct look at his eldest grandson. He asks if Lion has any interest in politics or in becoming the heir to the family. The protagonist denies it instantly, saying he has no interest whatsoever in those things. He states that he has always believed Lixil should become the head of the family, leaving his brother touched. With Lion's answer, the patriarch turns to Lixil with a serious expression on his face. He asks if Lixil can protect his brother as if he were his own life, and the young man swears he will. The grandfather takes a sip of wine and says that, with that, the matter of succession is settled. In his thoughts, the patriarch celebrates having resolved the succession issue so quickly. He reflects that, currently, the greatest threats to his family are the imperial family and a house of swordsmen. Since the imperial family is busy with their own disputes, they are not an immediate threat. The real problem, according to him, is the famous Vidennis house known for their skill with swords. The Vidennis family has just emerged from a brutal succession ritual that involved many losses. Patrick thinks that, although their situation is advantageous, it is best to avoid crossing paths with them. The grandfather turns to Lion and advises him to continue living as an Asteri and do what he desires. He says Lion can go ahead, but warns him with a serious and intimidating look. With his eyes glowing red, Patrick warns that if Lion gets hurt, he will not forgive him. The young man promises to take care of himself, and the grandfather relaxes and invites them to finish the meal in peace. Back at the party, Lion takes a sip of wine and observes his grandfather and Lixil interacting with the nobles. He thinks that dealing with other nobles must not be an easy task for either of them, but he also knows that he has his own work to do during that grand party. With a gleam in his eyes, Lion prepares to put his plan into action with the guests. A noblewoman approaches and asks who designed the clothes, and Lion sees her as his first client. Right after, other guests join in, all curious to know the origin of the outfits. Lion is surprised by the number of people and wonders if it is the effect of the 4-star suit. He prepares to answer, but says there is something the guests need to know first. The protagonist reveals that the designer is an illegitimate child of a noble house and was cast out by the nobility. The guests whisper among themselves, saying that the allies of the first prince care about such things. Lion overhears the conversation and thinks that perhaps Andre was a victim of the rivalry between the two princes. He offers to introduce the tailor, and the guests agree, saying they only care about the clothes. With a victorious smile, Lion says it would be rude to hide the tailor and prepares to introduce him. He reveals that the tailor's name is Andre and that his boutique is located in the Asteri family fiefdom. Next, Lion announces that there are only 3 slots left for orders, and the guests panic. Suddenly, a mysterious voice asks everyone to wait a moment, drawing attention. A silver-haired woman walks through the hall toward Lion with an imposing air. She reveals herself as Clarentia Videntis, the head of the renowned sword house, and asks a question. The guests whisper about what Marchioness Videntis will request, and Lion agrees to her request. The protagonist thinks that an order from the sword house is a great opportunity and asks what she wishes. Clarentia Videntis replies in a serious tone that she would like to order training clothes and casual clothes. The surrounding guests are shocked by the request, and the woman explains that the clothes she had. With a cold and frightening look, she finishes the sentence saying that her old clothes can no longer be used. Frightened by her aura, the other nobles make up excuses and flee, promising to make a reservation later. In an instant, the hall around them empties, leaving only Lion and Clarentia alone. Lion thinks that the people's fear is understandable, but decides that a client is a client. With a salesman's smile, he says it will take some time, and Clarentia agrees to pay a deposit. The woman says she will handle the payment separately after the party ends and walks away. Lion feels relieved that the conversation ended easier than he expected and prepares for the next step. He turns to the other nobles and announces that the slots are filled, but they can join the waiting list. The young man spends the rest of the party taking down orders and talking with nobles interested in Andre. With the reservation book full, Lion thinks that the tailor will certainly be very happy with the news. At that moment, Elvia approaches and announces that the patriarch has declared that the ritual is ready. The protagonist walks down a corridor and stops before an enormous, golden door, the entrance to the labyrinth. A red-haired noble greets him, praising the eldest grandson of the famous Asura family. The man introduces himself as Prince Tirasol Anis and asks if Lion is nervous. Lion thinks that the prince knows he cannot use magic, but answers with confidence that he is not. Suddenly, Lixil places himself between Lion and the prince, asking why his brother would be nervous. Tension arises between Lixil and Tiras, and Lion thinks about how much his brother resembles their grandfather. The first prince smiles and withdraws, and Lion thinks that he's exactly the type of person Lixil loathes. Lixil hands over the potion Lion requested and advises him be careful during the library ritual. With a confident smile, the protagonist prepares to enter the labyrinth and face the challenge. In a memory, he recalls how he used to hide in the library when he was younger and lacked talents. He wonders what treasure the first patriarch left there after the war against the demons. Lion thinks it must be a very valuable item, and Elvia approaches with a cushion for the ritual. He pricks his finger and lets a drop of his blood fall onto the floor to begin the opening ritual. A blue magic circle forms on the floor, and a powerful energy begins to envelop Lion's body. The princes and Clarentia feel the ground shake, and Tiras is astonished by the power released by the door. With an intense glow, the labyrinth doors begin to open slowly before everyone. Suddenly, a strange force begins to pull Lion inside, catching him by surprise. A dark energy grabs him and violently drags him toward the darkness of the labyrinth. A narration explains that the labyrinth can become a dungeon if someone tries to damage it. The chandelier in the hall begins to shake violently, indicating that something very wrong is happening. Tiras shouts in fear, and second Prince Kyle tells everyone to watch out for the trimmer. Lion screams that something is wrong and wonders if the library was supposed to open that way. With his eyes wide in terror, he tries to understand what is happening while being dragged. The dark energy envelops him completely, pulling him into the unknown depths of the labyrinth. Patrick and Lixil scream in despair, and Lion wonders what will happen to him now. While Lion is pulled into the darkness, a system window appears and an achievement is unlocked. He receives authorization to read all the books, gains 10 intelligence points and 10 maximum mana points. In the ballroom, chaos ensues, and the guests scream in terror from the violent tremor. Strange shadows begin to emerge from the floor, and the nobles run in panic, calling for help. The large chandelier in the center of the hall crashes down, further increasing everyone's despair. A woman screams in terror, warning everyone that the chandelier is falling right on top of them. The chandelier is about to crush one of the guests, who stands frozen in fear. Suddenly, a golden barrier appears and protects the guests, who realize it is Patrick's magic. A massive protective barrier envelopes the entire castle, and the guests feel relieved. Patriarch Asura uses his powerful magic to contain the disaster and protect everyone at the venue. He orders a knight named Rixon to guide the guests and ensure everyone's safety. Lixil runs to his grandfather, calling him by his lord title, with a worried expression. He asks what is happening, and Patrick explains that the library has spun out of control. With a serious expression, the patriarch turns and asks one of his men about the princes. The man informs him that Lixil used a protection spell on them, and that both are safe. Patrick is relieved to know that everyone is safe, despite all the turmoil. He then orders Lixil to send healers to the injured and prepare a rest area. Lixil is startled when his grandfather says he will guard the labyrinth entrance and leave the rest to him. He tries to argue, saying it is too dangerous, but the patriarch interrupts him firmly. Patrick reminds him of his duty as the next head of the family and sends him to fulfill his orders. The princes approach, concerned about the danger, but Patrick says that it is not a threat. With a commanding tone, he orders Lixil to go immediately and tend to the injured guests. First Prince Terra says he will help, and Lixil agrees, saying that Lion will be fine. With a heavy heart, Lixil looks at the labyrinth door and whispers his brother's name. The three walk away, leaving Patrick alone in front of the unstable labyrinth entrance. The grandfather thinks that the labyrinth is unstable and fears that Lixil might also get caught in the chaos. Suddenly, a voice interrupts him, asking why he is still standing there during an emergency. Patrick turns and sees Clarentia Vident is standing there and asks why she did not evacuate. The woman stares at him and says he seems completely certain that Lion is still alive. She comments that he acts as though he already knows how all of this will end in the end. The patriarch is surprised by her perception, but the woman offers to help him. He asks for the reason, since it would be more beneficial for her family not to get involved. Clarentia explains that she ordered clothes from Andre, and that she hates when her plans go wrong. She turns and says she will stay nearby and wait for events to unfold. Elvia appears beside Patrick, and the two watch Clarentia walk away in silence. The patriarch comments that the young head of the Videntis house has a remarkable perception of things. He then turns to Elvia and orders her to create a barrier around the labyrinth. The maid obeys, and a purple barrier rises, preventing any information from leaking out. Patrick takes out an old pocket watch and says they are going to restore the exterior of the labyrinth. With a determined look, he says that, this way, they can create a chance for Lion to escape. In a beautiful field of flowers, Lion hums to himself, enjoying the scenery. He watches a blue butterfly land on a flower, appreciating the calmness of the place. But in his thoughts, he feels frustrated because the labyrinth achievement was unlocked. The problem is that he has no idea how he managed to complete the labyrinth challenge. He stands up and begins to think, remembering how the labyrinth worked in the game. The young man realizes he is in the reward collection area, and since the labyrinth is completed, he is safe. In the game, one simply had to click yes to break the illusion, but now he does not know how to collect the prize. He reflects that the original lion entered and exited without issues, so the only change was his mana. But he dismisses the idea because if it were mana, his entire family could enter the labyrinth easily. So he wonders if the problem is him, a soul from another world, possessing Lion's body. Lion remembers that his grandfather stored a treasure there after the war against the demons. That war happened 50 years ago, around the same time the hero of legend disappeared. He concludes that the labyrinth recognized him as someone else, not as the true Lion Asteri. He knows that the demon war is the game's setting and that players assume the role of heroes. A shocking idea arises in his mind, and he wonders if his grandfather's treasure consists of his character's items. Lion repeats his reasoning, recalling that users become heroes to save the world from demons. If his grandfather's treasure belongs to the hero, he wonders if it is actually his main character's item. The theory makes sense, explaining why the system viewed him as if he were retrieving a stored item. He decides he cannot stay there forever, and with low mana his only option is to force his way out. The protagonist walks through the field, certain that there must be a way out, even at his level. Suddenly he steps on something and stops, looking down at the white flowers at his feet. He notices that the rare flowers are planted in a specific pattern, and that they cannot grow together. Lion also notices yellow flowers and purple weeds, each growing only in its own zone. He understands that if all types are mixed, something is very wrong with that place. The young man concludes that the area is subdivided and that the plants were placed there artificially. He believes that in a place where the rules of nature have been broken, there must be a key to escape. Lion leaps to a cliff where the three flowers grow together, certain that the answer lies there. He closes his eyes and focuses on the sound of his own heart, diving into his consciousness. By doing so, he manages to visualize his mana circle for the first time and becomes fascinated. A system window confirms that he can now check his mana circle data. The protagonist decides to focus and tries to make the mana flow visible to his eyes. With that, his expert eye skill is enhanced, allowing him to use it for 10 minutes. Upon opening his eyes, he sees red energy orbs and realizes that the place is a large trap. He concludes that either there are no mana threads there, or touching them would activate a new magic. With a smile, he decides to keep moving to find the true source of the problem. The young man walks through the flower field, using his new vision to find a way out of the illusion. Suddenly, a strange notification appears in his vision, but he cannot read what is written. As he approaches, his enhanced skill reveals the hidden name of the zone, and he realizes he has found it. The system reveals that this is the point of origin for the illusion's mana thread, and Lion kneels to look. He understands that he needs something to rid himself of the mana thread, and decides to take a look at the system shop. A system window informs him that since his assets have exceeded 100,000 shillings, all items in the shop have been unlocked. Lion Asteri notices that there is now a new tab in the shop called Survival and decides to look there first. He sees items with absurd prices like an emergency escape chair and an ancient key, and wonders why there are only these. The protagonist thinks that besides the prices, there is no point in selling things he cannot use and looks for a filter function. At that moment, a system window asks if he would like to apply a filter, and the young man gets excited about the function. He asks the system to show items below 120,000 shillings from cheapest to most expensive and including discounts. The filtered list is much easier to read, but Lion notices that many items have conditions that prevent immediate use. He focuses on two items that seem to be the most useful at the moment, a magic detector and sharp scissors. The young man finds the magic detector tempting but too expensive, and decides that the scissors are the best choice to use right now. Without hesitation, he decides to buy the item and presses the purchase button on the system screen. The purchase is confirmed, and the scissors are now permanently bound to him, though he regrets seeing his shillings vanish so fast. Holding the scissors, Lion likes the fact that they are a permanent item and hopes they will solve the problem easily. He prepares to use the new item and decides that he will first cut the source of the mana thread he found. With a smile, the young man realizes that all his effort in collecting and crafting items paid off, as digging is now very easy. Using a tool, Lion begins to dig forcefully at the exact spot where the illusion's mana source is buried. Suddenly, a system notification warns that only 1 minute remains for the enhancement of his expert eye. Lion is surprised that time passed so quickly and continues digging desperately as the mana threads glow. His shovel hits something hard beneath the earth, and with a shocked expression, he realizes he finally found what he was looking for. He throws the tool aside and begins to dig with his bare hands, racing against time to unearth the object. The protagonist pulls a small chest from the ground, realizing with joy that it is identical to the reward chests in the game. With only 10 seconds left, he readies himself with the scissors to cut the mana threads binding the chest. With a swift and precise movement, the scissors cut the blue energy threads coming out of the reward chest. As soon as the skill ends, the chest floats in the air, glowing intensely, and Lion celebrates having made it in time. A system window appears in the air, asking if he would like to claim the reward, and he confirms right away. The system informs him that the item will be rebound, stored in the inventory, and cannot be checked in the current location. Unable to see the item, a new message states that story mode will begin and that this memory cannot be skipped. Lion panics without understanding what story mode is or what is about to happen as his vision goes dark. The scene changes to a large hall where Lion stands before an enormous door, surrounded by other men. Marquis Patrick Astri asks Lixil if he handled the damage control well, and Lixil confirms that everything was hushed up. Lixil continues the report, saying he secured promises of cooperation from the two princes and the Videntis family. Patrick thinks that this way the rumors won't spread, and that the first prince's incompetence was useful this time. Lixil explains that he acted quickly so that the temple and the underworld wouldn't find out about his brother Lion's whereabouts. Patrick praises Lixil's work but reinforces that the information must never leak to those two specific factions. He thinks about the Archbishop of the Temple, who obsessively investigates anything related to the hero. His thoughts turn to the underworld, a major power founded by the hero's former companions. Patrick knows that those two factions could uncover the secret, realizing that Lion Astri possesses a special power. He is increasingly convinced that somehow Lion is directly connected to the hero of the past. The first piece of evidence was the hero's potion, and the second is the labyrinth incident where the hero's treasure was kept. Lion's grandfather concludes that there is something about the young man that even he himself is not aware of yet. Before Lixil, Patrick decides that they need to keep this information an absolute secret until they discover the whole truth. Back in the memory, the entire hall shakes violently, and someone shouts in despair that the labyrinth is moving. Marquis Patrick Astri orders everyone to prepare for what is to come, while Lixil feels an immense power coming from within. An intense purple light shines from inside the labyrinth door, and Lixil says that something is coming out. Suddenly, a small object flies out of the light and strikes Patrick's face hard, leaving everyone in shock. Patrick is dazed by the impact, while Lixil looks at the object that fell into his hands, not understanding anything. He notices that the object is a folded paper note and wonders what it could be. With a confused expression, Lixil begins to unfold the small note to read what is written. He recognizes his brother Lion's handwriting and notices that the note wasn't in a hurry but is clean, without any stains. Already recovered from the blow, Patrick approaches and asks Lixil what the note says. Lixil holds the note with trembling hands, looking at his grandfather with a nervous expression before answering. The scene returns to Lion, and a system window confirms that his entry into story mode has been successfully registered. He is sitting alone in a dark place with a headache, questioning if he really entered the system's story mode. A notification informs him that the memory video is playing, and Lion understands that he is watching someone's memory. In the memory, a person hands a small chest to a young Patrick, saying that he no longer needs it. Lion is shocked to hear his grandfather's name, realizing that this is the memory of the day he received the hero's item. He tries to listen to the conversation but cannot understand it well, and complains about the viewing angle and having created his character randomly. The young Patrick accepts the chest and promises that he will keep it safe, as requested. The memory ends, and the system informs him that Lion has peeked into the saved memory, exiting story mode. Lion finds himself back in the destroyed library of the labyrinth, confused by the scene ending so suddenly. He feels that the scene was important, but in the end, he obtained almost no useful information. The young man deduces that the memory was from the middle of the Demon War, when the hero entrusted the item to his grandfather for the future. Finally, the item in the chest is revealed, a set of the hero's accessories that serves to suppress and hide the user's information. Lion remembers that in the game, this item was not hard to get and was mostly used to gain experience bonuses. He puts on a bracelet from the set and feels glad, as it appeared at the exact moment he needed to hide his mana. At that moment, the system asks if he wants to check the detailed information of his mana circle, and he accepts. The screen shows his mana circle, but Lion gets confused seeing that he has only one circle but can store a lot of mana. He thinks about how other people train day and night for years to expand their capacity and reach the second or third circle. Sitting in the middle of the projection of his own circle, the young man wonders why his first circle is so large. In a small version of himself, he decides not to think too much about it and concludes that a good thing is simply a good thing. Lion stands up, relieved to know that with this new item, no one will discover his secret, and celebrates his success at the ceremony. He stops for a moment and thinks that now there is a new problem he needs to solve. The problem is that, despite everything, he is still trapped inside the labyrinth, which is completely destroyed. The young man decides that he must first look for a way out and approaches one of the books fallen on the floor. A barrier prevents him from advancing, stating that access is denied without the master's permission, who is now Lion himself. He questions if he became the master because he cleared the labyrinth and realizes that this was not part of his original plan. The system informs him that the entrance is broken and repairing itself, and he realizes he cannot leave the place in that state. Lion panics, imagining his grandfather Patrick yelling at him for causing such a large disaster. Suddenly, he gets an idea and realizes that if he is the master of the place, perhaps he himself can clean up the mess. The system offers the option to reset the labyrinth, but he declines as that would make all items and books disappear. He asks for other options, and the system offers a manual adjustment to restore the labyrinth, but warns that it will take time. Lion compares manual restoration to modifying a save file and decides to use a point from 1 week ago as a reference. He specifies that the reversion should exclude the artifacts he already possesses and asks how long it will take to finish. The system replies that the process will take 672 hours, which shocks the young man as he realizes it is an entire month. The protagonist asks if he can at least walk around the labyrinth while he waits, and the system confirms that the master can go anywhere. He then questions if there is a way to send messages outside and discovers he can use an old book slot for that. Satisfied with the answers, the young man smiles and agrees to the plan, preparing to start the long repair process. Lion gives the command to begin the restoration, and a large magic circle of green light forms around him. The magic begins to work, and the books and structures of the library begin to fly and reorganize themselves into the right place. Seeing the process begin, Lion asks the system to send him to the final area of the labyrinth so he can wait there. In an instant, he is teleported to a beautiful field of flowers, finding the new master function very interesting. Now the young man faces the new challenge and realizes he needs to find a way to survive in that place for a month. Looking at the scenery, he is surprised to notice a huge body of water and wonders if that is a lake. He is impressed that such a large lake exists inside a labyrinth, but feels relieved that it does not seem dangerous. A system window gives a scientific explanation about life in the lake, and Lion asks for a simpler and easier to understand version. The system explains that there are edible fish and crustaceans, and that there is only a single rare level fish in the entire lake. Next, a new notification informs him that fishing in the lake has been unlocked by his authority as the labyrinth master. He worries about not having a fishing rod, but soon remembers that he has exactly what he needs for the situation. Shortly after, a fishing bobber floats in the calm, crystal clear water of the lake while the young man waits patiently. Sitting comfortably in a chair, he is grateful to have found fishing equipment in the shop despite the steep price. He has already caught some small fish, and is relieved that he won't need to eat the bait to survive in that place. With the gentle breeze and the view of the lake, the young man relaxes, certain that at least he won't starve during that month. Suddenly, the bobber is pulled forcefully underwater, startling Lion with the unexpected strength of the tug. He stands up quickly and holds the rod firmly, feeling that the fish on the line is very different from the others he caught. The fishing rod bends drastically with the weight and power of whatever is on the other end of the line. The young man realizes this is no joke and that it could be a truly large fish, so he begins to reel in the line slowly. With an excited smile, he fights the fish, taking care not to rush and end up losing the big catch. With one final tug, he manages to pull a huge purple fish out of the water, and the system congratulates him for catching a labyrinth carp. He holds the giant fish, and the system description says it restores health and stamina, making it perfect for consumption. With his heart racing, the young man understands the thrill that makes so many people fall in love with fishing. Because he understood the essence of fishing, he awakens a new talent and his fishing proficiency rises to the apprentice level. Lion places the large fish in the basket and celebrates, because the carp that increases stamina is exactly what his fragile body needs. Looking at the beautiful field of flowers around the lake, he decides that the first thing to do is to set up a place to cook. He takes out various camping and cooking items from his inventory, such as tables, chairs, knives, pots, and seasonings. The young man sets everything up near a tree and comments that those items were meant for Lixel but ended up being useful for him. While organizing his things, he finds a small item in his alchemy kit that he does not recognize. The item is a magic flint, a free gift from the system that allows lighting campfires with much greater ease. With just a strike of the magic flint, a strong and vibrant flame instantly arises, ready for the campfire. He admires the campfire crackling under the evening sky, feeling that the fire makes the environment much more comfortable. With everything ready, Lion approaches the wooden table to begin preparing the large carp he caught. He holds the fish carefully, preparing to remove the purple scales and begin the outdoor meal. He decides that a primitive roast is the best option, and the system informs him that the fish's innards are not fit to eat. However, the same window says that the innards are a perfect ingredient for alchemy, and Lion decides to seize the opportunity. Without a second thought, the young man throws the carp's innards directly into his large alchemy cauldron. The cauldron begins to heat up by itself as soon as the ingredient enters, and the young man finds this automatic function very convenient. While the alchemy takes place, he prepares several skewers with vegetables and other foods, thinking that everything tastes better this way. Carefully, he skewers the fish with the head facing downward, explaining that this helps the excess oil drain away. This way, the meat stays very tender on the inside while the skin gets perfectly crispy on the outside. He positions the skewers around the campfire, satisfied to see that his primitive carp roast is ready to begin. While the food roasts slowly, Lion looks at the sky and decides it is a good time to set up his sleeping area. He thinks it is a bit of a chore, but knows it is a unique opportunity to camp that way. With a smile, the young man says that a little extra effort is necessary to get a romantic camping vibe. He sets up a small improvised tent with a sleeping bag, thinking that the final result didn't turn out bad at all. Looking at the food on the campfire, he realizes he finished setting up at the perfect time for dinner. Sitting in front of the fire, he takes one of the roasted fish, which glows with a golden hue and looks delicious. The system describes the item as grilled labyrinth carp, which grants satiety and a chance to gain something special. Lion notices a warning on the item for the first time, stating that the food cannot be taken outside the labyrinth. Without caring much about the warning, he decides it is time to eat and takes a large bite of the grilled fish. The fish skin is crispy as if it had been fried, and the meat inside is incredibly tender and juicy. In addition to the texture, the unique aroma of the grilled fish stimulates his appetite and makes him want to eat even more. The flavor is so incredible that the young man gets emotional, saying it is the perfect kind of food to eat with rice and kimchi. He is amazed because the carp does not have the strong earthy smell or the small bones that fish usually have. While he eats, a system notification warns that his maximum mana has increased by a microscopic amount. Lion is completely shocked by the message and cannot believe what he just read in the system window. He confirms that his mana reserve actually got larger and is astonished by the idea of being able to expand it just by eating. The young man thinks that if the mages outside knew about this, they would have dried up the lake, and wonders if it would work on Lixil. He decides that he definitely needs to save some of that fish to give to his brother later. After eating, Lion turns to the alchemy cauldron, curious to see what the result of the process was. Inside the cauldron, a shiny white pearl floats, the labyrinth carp essence, which increases mana recovery. Lion is shocked to see that the item is of expert level and imagines that the effects must be absolutely massive. After a moment of surprise, a smile of satisfaction appears on his face as he holds the valuable pearl. He admits he cannot suppress his curiosity with items like this and decides to save the essence to use later. The young man thinks that because of recent events, he couldn't focus on alchemy, but now he has plenty of ingredients. He knows that the labyrinth is full of fresh materials and mana, and best of all, there is no one around to interrupt him. With a determined look, he smiles and thinks that, technically, that place has become something very special to him. That labyrinth is now his exclusive hunting and training ground, a perfect place for him to get stronger all by himself. With his hands together in a greedy look, he celebrates having far more things to explore than he imagined. But before he starts exploring everything, he knows he needs to finish eating his delicious grilled carp. A few days pass and Lion can now catch huge labyrinth crawfish which are as big as lobsters. He holds a net filled with 3 massive crawfish and wonders if he is just having a very lucky day. After storing the crawfish in his inventory, he decides to use some leftover flour to make a soup. Walking barefoot through the grass, Lion reflects that he is slowly getting used to the quiet life inside the labyrinth. He establishes a routine, checking his fish traps in the morning and then going to tend to the crops he planted. Upon checking his small garden, the young man is happy to see that his banana sweet potatoes are growing very healthily. Satisfied with the plants, the protagonist decides that on that day he will focus on gathering other types of ingredients. During his search, he finds several items such as a spicy blackberry, a mushroom that grants mana, and a special daisy. He finds the daisy flower very beautiful, and the system shows that it can be sold for 300 shillings. The young man thinks it would be nice to plant some flowers to decorate his campsite, but suddenly something in the description surprises him. He looks again at the system window and focuses on the selling price, unable to believe what he is seeing. With wide eyes, Lion realizes that the simple flower he picked can actually be sold for money.